It's Thursday evening, and welcome to Tech Charged, episode 14, a Turn Down for What live podcast. We had an intro this week. Awesome for us. Well executed.
I was
Great
thinking
job.
about that when it was happening. I'm like, okay,
not
good start.
completely technologically challenged this week.
It's great stuff. With us, as always, is Platinum Jace Craft Miller, and and our co-host Martin Meek, the builder of all battery, hydrogen. What else is on your agenda? Generators. Always trying to get me to do something to get me in trouble with my truck, even though I've had plenty of my own.
You do that on your own. You don't need my help.
Hey, add a snowplow to the front of it, but power it by hydraulic gas that comes from a hydrogen generator that I've just made. He's like I don't know if he's a mad genius or like taking over the world. Like one of us is Pinky, one of us is the brain. I guess you're going to be the brain. That makes sense. And I'm pretty pink, so off we go.
Yeah. And soon to be, hopefully, Platinum Chris Bow family.
Hopefully Platinum Chris and Platinum Jace, and now we just need somebody to wreck a Platinum so that we can have Martin rebuild a Platinum.
It won't be me. It won't be me.
I tried to buy a black one this week. It went too much. 28,000. I was like, no.
Yeah. I'm curious. I've never actually been in a Platinum, so I'm curious.
Are you kidding me?
Really? Never been in one?
I've seen him at the EV stuff and whatever.
Yeah.
I've never actually ridden in a Platinum, so I'm curious.
Really, Jace, you've got firsthand experience here, and I hate to admit I haven't been in a Platinum Lightning either. But do they have massaging seats yet? Is it back?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Is yours?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Is mine?
You'll have
it.
20.
Yeah.
Really? Oh,
To know, it's called multi-contour. That's how you know. Yeah. Multi-contour seats equals massaging.
Yeah, they're not massaging seats. I had them in my 19 Platinum. So what I noticed with those, and Jace, you can correct me with the Lightning, but on those, it's really an anti-fatigue option. It's not really sitting there rubbing your back like you think.
What does it do?
I mean, I would say in the Lightning, it's pretty good. Is it like are you getting like a full body massage? Like, no, but I mean, it's going from, I'd say like just maybe under your back blades all the way down to, just above the knee-ish, maybe a little higher. There's all sorts of modes you can do.
Wait, above the knee? It's going down to the seat?
Oh, yeah.
It gets.
You know what those are? Those are airbags that sit there and inflate and roll. That's what those are inside of.
It's like lumbar adjustments, right? But to the max, essentially.
Yeah,
it's gonna go to.
And that's what it feels like.
It's gonna go to my buttocks.
I put my mom in there and didn't tell her what I was gonna do, and it did the back, and she's like, okay, and then it got to the she's like, what the heck, If you don't know it's coming, it's a little startling. So, but it works. I mean, it works well. It's something that I've used a ton. Can't say I have, but
But the seats are nice.
Yeah, the seats are, and they're a little flatter than the Lariat seats. The Lariat seats have a little bit more of a bolster and a bucket to them. So
is that a good thing or a bad thing if it's flatter?
Could be.
In the 19 Super Duty, absolutely sucks. I bought that 19. It had the sunroof busted out, had been sitting outside for like a year. It had a plastic over it. And I thought the seats got hard from rain. Like there was water in the cup holder when I bought that truck. So I gutted it. We put a new cab on it. But I thought it was hard from rain. And so I replaced the cushions under those seats with new factory Ford cushions. Zero difference. Those were the hardest seats. You couldn't drive 2 hours without dying. We had to go to Walmart and buy those big, cushy cushions for your house chair. But
I wouldn't say ours feel quite the same as that. We find them pretty comfy. We took them up to a couple, to Detroit already. I took 2.5 hours today. I was good. But they are harder for sure than the Lariat seats with the massaging feature. But yeah, I like the flatness a little bit. When you're cornering, it's a little bit more slipperier, obviously, but it's nicer getting in and out of the vehicle a little bit. That'll be getting out.
That'll be the nightmare. I buy a Platinum and halfway across the country, I realize the seats suck.
I think you'll like
I
it.
will happily trade you for a brand new pair of Lariat seats.
Oh man.
So,
No, you'll like 'em.
so that kind of transitions just a little bit. The seats in the gas and the EV, I think, are the same. I don't think there's a difference in Platinum seats.
I think you're right.
They
about
are
that.
the same. They are the same seat covers on a gas and a Lariat because I have gas ice seat covers in both my trucks when I built them.
Yeah, and everything's gone to ActiveX now. It used to be leather for a second.
Yeah, well, I mean,
now
it feels like leather. It's good enough.
Yeah.
So
I don't. Yeah.
anyhow, we're gonna dive into that tonight. Figure out why are people not switching? Like, what's the real reason? I think that's what we were kind of alluding to in the title. Is we want to know, and we know, but we want to go kind of unpack the reasons why most of our country is either against EV or is not ready to switch. And we know there's some political sides and there's a small percentage of people, but I think the majority of us are not switching for real reasons. And just to kind of highlight what I think they are, and we can get into these three, I think you guys will agree, is not necessarily in order, but first and foremost is cost. So EVs cost more than a gas counterpart in the same trim levels. They just do. And I think that stops a lot of people. But, the people who cost, I'm not going to say is no money's no object to some guys, but you'll buy a Platinum. You two both are going to own Platinums. And so you'll step up a little bit for a nice truck.
Let me just say lease, just for
just
full, but I gotta,
you could at least a Pro. I mean, you leased the Platinum. So, and then number two, what I think, and 2 or 3 are really, to me, they're really hand in hand. Range and charge time. I think that those 3 things are the things stopping people. So it's those 2 or 3 trips a year that they take that they certainly don't want to stop with 4 kids or 3 kids and have to stop and try to every 3 hours or every 4 hours in a Lightning or every 2 or 3 or 4 hours in a Tesla or Mach-E or whatever you're driving. Because we all have, short of the Silverado and the Lucid, about 3.5, 4 hours is all you're going to get out of a EV now. And it's really not even that much on some of the less expensive, like a Bolt or a base model Tesla Mach-E or Tesla Model 3, or like our Mach-E is a 260-mile car fully charged. So it's really more like 200. That's not something that I think the average people, they're trying to enjoy vacation, get to Disney World, get to Disneyland, get to Silver Dollar City in the Midwest. They want to go to places and see things, not sit there and worry about charging their EV and where am I going to charge it. And I don't want to make it sound like those 3 things are the only 3 things, but I think they're the top 3. And I think they are the main reasons that stopping most people from jumping to an EV from a gas. Do you guys, the last numbers I heard was like 150 or 60,000 Lightnings. Do you know how many have sold so far?
I thought it was like
I don't have that number, but
test calendar say 86,000 today. Was that an accurate figure?
Yeah, it sounds closer. Well, let's see. So
22 since start of production.
That's
22 was only like 50, there was only like 15,000 in the first year.
Okay,
somewhere in that ballpark, and I think year 2 was like 35.
So we're getting
now you're
close
up to
50.
50. And then 24 was like 40,000. So that's like 90. So it's somewhere probably close.
I think
to
what he said too was, I think what he was saying too was sales. So 86,000. So they probably obviously produced more, but
so
direct sales 86,000.
I pulled this up. This is just a Cox Automotive, comparison. Now this isn't total sales volume. This is like year over year, 23 versus 24 increases in each one of these. So in 24, according to this, if there's any truth to this, and it looks fairly accurate, but somebody fact check me.
Cox Automotive is pretty,
Honda did the best at 40,000 increase from 23 to 24 sales. And I think the Prologue probably had a lot to do with that. I don't know if this one is specifically talking BEV or if it's plug-in hybrid or a hybrid in that, but I would think there's probably
that's got it. I think that's BEV because plug-in hybrid, Toyota and Honda crush it. Like they do huge
I
numbers.
think
plug-in
based on
hybrid.
the
Well,
those
maybe
two in
not
this
plug-in,
column.
maybe just hybrid.
And it's only
Yeah.
volume change from 1 year over year, so
Yeah.
it could be
Oh, that's
skewed
true too.
too.
So
Yeah,
maybe
on
it is
this chart.
including
Right.
plug-in.
Yeah, on this chart. So, if you look at Tesla, like they are not doing well from 24 to 23, but I think it's the market was saturated and I would not attribute that, in my opinion, to the political side. I think it's really there's more options for people. You've got Hyundai and you've got Kia really coming on, and then Ford and GM have released a whole lot. There's more options. So the guys who love Tesla, sure, and I think it's a great car, but there's options now, and the people that are coming in that maybe wouldn't want to drive a Tesla because the stuff that goes along with that, not just the political side, you've got options like GM's got. You look, they're right behind Honda, so for year-over-year sales, and then Ford is right there at 25,000. So they're really doing pretty good. And so I went ahead and pulled up some numbers from 24, and this is basically the LDV there in the center. That light duty vehicles, non-hybrid, has went down to 79%. So to say that EVs aren't taking off, I mean, over 3/4 of the market still gas cars. So that's what we were alluding to. But we're 21% in hybrid, electric, and plug-in hybrid. So it's starting to make a trend upwards if you look at that. And then breakout of just EV sales and hybrid sales as a percentage. Hybrids doing well, plug-in hybrids kind of struggling. But electric and hybrid are pretty well right there together if you see that chart up to 24. Electric did take a little dive at the beginning of 24, and then it's back up again at the end. But
there was a thing about the plug-in hybrids too, where people were buying them because in California because they qualified for tax incentives, and I think federal too. They qualified for tax incentives,
and
then a bunch of people were taking the 7,500 off, and then the state incentives, and then they weren't even plugging it in. To them, it was just a way to get a similar car cheaper, and then get the carpool sticker. And so it was totally incentivizing the wrong behaviors, unfortunately. And it's to my mind, something that has the plug-in hybrid needs to have a big enough battery, in my opinion, to get you to an actual place. It's I wish they were better with that. I think the series hybrid stuff that China does and US is going to start doing soon is a way better solution. But the numbers are tough because do you know if Cox and those guys are doing registrations? Because Ford is tricky because what number are you looking at? Are you looking at what's sold to the dealers? Because that's what Ford is selling.
Right. And I didn't get deep enough into that to really have, those specific numbers. It just kind of was a broad overview of it's a metric. It didn't necessarily give the perfect picture. But I think it shows you that there's a trend upwards. So we're getting more people that want to go there. But I was hoping to have some guests on tonight. I had a guy lined up, and he had other things going unless he gets loose. But I talked with him quite a bit. I actually work with him, and he's an engineer. He's an older guy, 60s, in his low 60s. He drives an F-150, and I'm trying to get him to jump to a Lightning. Just based on what I see as his use case, and I can't get him to make the jump. He appreciates the technology. We've been to Canada twice together. We've been to New Orleans together. So he knows what it's like to drive in a Lightning I'm not just picking on Lightning because we are all like those, but there's a lot of cars that are really comfortable to road trip. And I think the Silverado's comfortable. I honestly think the Cybertruck's really comfortable after driving one. And if you get on the forums, those guys all love their trucks. Of course, we all do in all of our own forums. But I think there's a lot of vehicles that are really comfortable, the quiet. Those are the things that keep me going, that keep me coming back to it, why I'm not going to switch away.
What was their hesitation because my initial impression was, you got to get butts and seats and let them experience it, but they have experienced it, but they're still hesitant. Yeah. What is the feedback?
So for instance, I think Kevin is a perfect example of the prime American who knows about it, respects the technology. He wants to take off and go to his son who lives in Baton Rouge from middle America here in Kansas or, northern Oklahoma, and stop one time You know, he wants to get up in the morning and be there that evening. So he has more time with his kid. And so for that, and he does that a few times a year, he doesn't want to stop and charge. He thinks it's a great technology for commuters. And if he could get something cheap to drive back and forth to work, but they're not a family and a household that's going to have 3 cars. His wife has a car and he has a car, and that's it. They don't want a third. And so to say that EVs are a great commuter car, I think that's true. But you also have the argument of, I have to buy a third car just to be a commuter, when they can buy a Prius, or they can buy something that's pretty efficient and then still take it on a trip, a minivan, you know, an Equinox that's a gas. There's the, you know, Buick makes a few models that are pretty nice to road trip in, you know, if you want that kind of car.
That's a hard hurdle to get over, because if somebody is, that's what they want, that's what they value, you know? And so that's kind of understandable. It's like, we know you can do it, but we also know, you know, with the loaner Dodge, it's not a Dodge, it's a Ram. Sorry. Thank you for correcting me earlier, Mark. The Ram, I drove that thing from Anaheim to home. Didn't have to gas it up, you know? So if you're used to
crossed
that,
your mind, did you?
Yeah, not a doubt. Now, here's the thing, right? That was all highway mileage, going super efficient as a gas truck gets. Now, for the past week, I've been driving it to work, which is how I normally drive my Lightning. 13.2 miles a gallon, driving it the way I wouldn't. So that's why my use case has always been great for the Lightning, because the way I typically drive it, it's not typical that I road trip it, you know, but this guy is fixated on the one thing. And if he doesn't, if he's only got such a window to see his family, he doesn't want to spend half a day charging. He wants to spend that half a day with his family, or he doesn't want to get there at 10 o'clock at night. He wants to get there at 7 for dinner. So I get
and
that.
that's exactly the case that I was arguing with him. You know, very politely, we were debating, you know, this, because we just went to New Orleans and went to his boy's house 2 weeks ago, and we took my Lightning. It was 4 stops, and none of them were over 30 minutes, so it cost us 2 hours. The problem was, we had to be, and this was a perfect example. So we left at 5 o'clock in the evening, and we got to Mount Pleasant, Texas that evening, and then got up the next morning and had to be at the airport by 4:30 the next day. In order to leave from here to make it to the airport in a gas, you leave at about 4:30 or 5 in the morning. That's mostly reasonable for people to get up really early and just drive all day. To do that in the Lightning, it's 2:30 in the morning, and neither one of us wanted any part of that. You might as well not have went to bed. So then you just back it back up to after work the day before. You drive down, you grab an $80 hotel, which was what we found, and it was a wonderful hotel, let me tell you. But you grab a hotel and then you're on down. So after making that trip, on the way back, I asked him, I said, Kevin, what would stop you from doing this? He said, well, there's 2 things. Number one, my wife's no way is she going to do that. She don't want any part. They want instant gratification. I want to get in the car and we're going to stop for 5 minutes. And then when we're ready to go to get back on the road, we're leaving. And in the Lightning, you're 30 minutes, because we had those stops where it was absolutely not the distance of that the truck could travel. So when we talk about range, and I wanted to unpack that a little bit, and you guys can chime in anytime. Range is not how far the car can go in an EV. It's how far the chargers are spread apart. You know, it doesn't matter if you got a 285 mile range truck. If the charger's 290 miles apart, you have to stop. We're in a gas car, it's every corner.
Or even the other way. Like if you can go 290 miles, but the charger is at 240 and the next one is at 320, you're stopping at 240 and you're you know, you're stopping.
And then when you're towing, for like me, I'm stopping at every charger and barely making it to them, you know? So that's really the range problem. When I've always said range is not an issue for the EV, I don't think it is. I think my truck, and even the Platinums, the Cybertruck, the Silverado, they don't have a range problem. They have a charge time problem. So I asked him, same conversation. I said, okay, so we stopped 4 times. You would have had to stop once in your gas truck. Are you going to drive all the way to New Orleans from here without stopping but 1 time? And he's like, no way. I got to stop, but I don't want to stop very long. So I think the biggest thing you're going to have in welcome, Paul. There's Paul. You're going to have with an EV is we have 5 to 15 minute charge times. You know, we've seen it in some Chinese stuff coming. And if we have a 300-mile range with a 10-minute charge, it's going to explode. I truly believe that. It can't explode at $80,000 in a truck when the other ones are 60. But that's what we're going to see. And that's my opinion.
I definitely think you hit the nail on the head with the charger location. You know, we've had this conversation a lot of times. Like, I remember one time we were talking on Twitter, this big conversation, and somebody was like, well, I think charge port location really matters. You know, that's a huge deal. And I was like, charge port location? I think charger location matters a lot more than charge port location, right? Like, we need chargers, period. And all chargers should be able to use by whatever car has whatever charge port, in my opinion. You know, if they can be used by a truck with a trailer, then they're going to be able to be used by anybody, you know, with a charge port anywhere on the car. So, you know, that's number one. But I think number two, like you said, you know, price wise, I mean, we're getting a little closer to that price parity. It's getting closer. You know, Ford actually advertises on their site for 2025 for Ford Pro that they have, what would you call it? Hits matched price parity with gas when you compare a Pro to like an XLT to XLT. It's very, very close. And they're giving fleet deals to basically match that. However, you have to think about that, right? Like, what's the use case? Like we said with range, you know, I mean, it's interesting, but I mean, I do think we do see the habits changing, but I think overall, you're exactly right with, we need, the range is fine. The actual numbers range is, you know, it's good. It could be better, obviously, like Silverado, but with the battery density and, you know, the energy density, we're just not there yet. But if we could get charge times down, I mean, I sat at a charger today for 25 minutes. If I could get that 10 to 15 minutes shorter, then you have less people on chargers, you know, all the time, because, or, you know, you're cycling through people quicker. Yeah. And we still don't have a ton of chargers around here. I mean, you know, you still have to, you're like you guys were saying, let's say there's a charger every, you know, 75 miles, right? That charger here, at least here in the Midwest, that charger only has, at the Pilot EV Go, you're talking 4 chargers total. You know, I mean, everybody can charge simultaneously on 2 things, but if one of those are down, you only have 2 chargers. So, I mean, I went to Dearborn today and I was talking with Ford about this exact conversation in public charging. And, you know, that was my number one feedback to them was the most important thing out of charging and any public charging is location of the charger. Then from there, everything falls. It might be different for you, you know, and Chris in California, you know, where there's kind of, you know, more ubiquitous electric vehicle charging. But here, it's still really dependent upon location.
Yeah, we are that way too, Jason, Midwest and Kansas. It's you get where they are, and some locations you pull up and there's nothing. I was headed up to Paul's online. I headed to his place a few weeks ago, and I come back through the middle of Iowa, and I decided to drive all night. And when you're on the interstates and you drive all night, there's going to be a place to use the bathroom. I found myself where we're behind a tree using the bathroom because everything's closed at the chargers. Mm-hmm. I mean, I didn't have a choice. Either that or you don't drive at night.
And, I mean, Paul's got a bunch of good points here that you can kind of start ticking the boxes on. I mean, when, you know, first and foremost, you know, my state of California, nobody likes to be told what to do. The EVs are huge here. So there's just something in the psyche of people that they don't want to feel forced to do something. Yeah. They need to come to something on their own terms, and they need to see why it's, you know, why it is a benefit. So there's already going to be a visceral reaction against it. And then you layer onto that the visceral reaction is coming from a ultra liberal state with lots of regulation and lots of stuff like California, which a bunch of other states, you know, then followed. And that just, it breeds resentment. And then you layer on the price. And, you know, whenever there's something that is out of your reach and everybody's saying how cool it is, you're like, well, screw you. Like, I don't need your fancy XYZ. I don't need your $1,000 iPhone. I don't need your, you know, Oculus headset. I don't need, right. You just pile on the resentment of it. And, you know, part of how Tesla sold their stuff was putting superchargers everywhere. And then, like Paul says, they made them free for certain. They're doing it with Cybertruck. It's a value add, right? And Volkswagen did it for 3 years. And so
Even Ford, really, in a certain, with their, just 250 kilowatt hour, or kilowatts of free charging.
That covers a lot of people for a year. I mean, that not a lot of people travel in EVs right now, mostly for those
It covered
reasons
us
that we're talking about.
for a year. Yeah, I mean, it was good but we had both trucks. We had 500 kilowatt hour. I mean, it was awesome.
Now, for me, I would have burned that in one trip, and so it depends on the use case.
It's shocking to me that you use EV as much as you do, with how much you tow and how far you go and what you do. Like,
well, it's funny because I assume it's as much as I do. I assume it's just what everybody does. And I was down in Tulsa last night talking to Zach, my buddy that we're working on the generator with, and was trying to visit with him about route planning and some of the apps that we use. And he's like, I don't even care. He's running a car LinkedIn box so he can have his car scanner app up. I said, well, that won't link to the navigation and tell your battery percentage. He says, Martin, I don't travel. I don't take this truck on road trips. We rent a car. And he put 100,000 miles on the XLT Lightning, and they rent a car on every trip. And I'm like, so I really wanted to unpack that with him and say, hey, Zach, why? What is the problem? I mean, I put 80,000 miles on my Lightning, and most of those are road trips towing. And he's like, we just don't want to deal with it. With the kids in the back, I want to pull in and get them their snacks, their drinks, their bathroom. But when the kids are, for some reason, there's this hang up. But when the kids are sitting in the car and we're not moving, it's like the tension just builds and the kids are fighting. And, so most people, I just hear that a lot. And it's interesting because I don't have that opinion. I'm traveling in the truck or in an EV. When I come to California this summer in a couple months, Chris, to see you, it'll be something electric powered. I'm 99% sure it's going to be the Lightning, even though we just got our next Tesla today. It came in last night at midnight. And man, do I want to drive that car to California. But anyway.
Yeah, I think too, with the changing of habits is huge. Rates have played a huge role. I think in general, there's just been so many different things that have combined in, a horrible storm, that have sort of slowed things down. And that's why we've seen Ford pivot too. We've seen Ford pivot to, and other companies pivot to
and I think they
hybrid. And I think that was probably, maybe Lightning was a little early of a jump, but I don't know. They learned so much from it, and they'll take what they've learned. I know Ford has learned so much from Lightning. I know Ford has learned so much from Mach-E. So, I think these are all learnings, and you just but there's a big business, behind it all, right? There's a very large, very successful, very profitable business behind all of that. So they have to protect what, they've built for 120 plus years, right? So it's interesting to see what it all is going to go down with it. But we do, like you said, we're still seeing electric vehicles grow. Is it at the rate that maybe what we expected? No. But it's happening. And people are joining. I will say though, I've said this on Twitter a few times. I don't have anybody in my circle of friends here in Northeast Ohio that are our age, that make similar amount of money that we do. I don't have a single friend that's looking for an EV that when they're looking for a car. Right. I just don't. That pains me to say that. It's not something that I'm rah about, I mean, I try my hardest. So, all of my friends are like, oh, I'm sure, he's posting another thing about electric vehicle again, on my Instagram or whatever. But they see that it's working for us, but I still will tell you, they are just not that interested. I have maybe one friend off the top of my head that is somewhat interested in buying a Mach-E, but to pull the trigger and actually make that jump, I don't see it happening. And now, we see Mach-E prices going up. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take to change
Mach-E
those average people.
Mach-E prices going up and fuel prices dropping. I mean, I hate to say it. The flip side to what Trump is doing is he's dropping energy prices. So that makes gas even more attractive to people who are buying a new car. It's not that they're necessarily wanting to get on board with whatever he's doing, Trump's doing, but when fuel prices are $2, $2.25 a gallon in a lot of parts of the country right now,
there's no incentive to change.
Wow. Why would you go buy an electric truck? It actually costs me today probably more to drive my truck to California than it would a gas F-150.
And that was when we saw those huge spikes in EV sales, is when gas hit $5 a gallon over here, or $4 over here, which here was
energy hasn't changed. Energy's pretty in the for the Tesla. If you have a membership or EA in the 32 to 45 cents a kilowatt hour membership rates, there's some 50s and 60s out there, but it hasn't changed much.
And really gas. I mean, in general, gas has been the same for 3-4 years now. I mean, we're going, and I've really no big swings. It's coming down, a little, but I mean, there's been some here and there, but yeah, I just think that to change those habits, like I've tried with my parents too, to get them, I wanted to get them a Lyriq, and they cross-shopped an XT5, which they've owned 4 of them now or something, and the Lyriq. And at the time, unfortunately, Optic and whatever the other one is, it wasn't out at the time. So I wanted to show them those, because those are a little bit closer to the XT5, especially particularly budget-wise. Lyriq is a little bit longer as well.
Yeah.
But, they looked at the Lyriq, they were blown away, right? They're like, oh, this is gorgeous. It's beautiful. It looks great. But it's, the lease is $800, $900 a month. And the XT5 demo is, like $520, for more miles and what, and they're like, oh, and it has CarPlay, and they're concerned that, GM's going the route with, and they don't like that. So there's a lot of reasons to it, but
I'm still finding here, like I've got into this Tesla world. I would much rather be building Lightnings. I love them. I think it's a cool truck. It's still an F-150. I've always enjoyed building F-150s, but I've been buying more Teslas because there's 3. Okay, I work at Deere. We have about 150 people that work there in the car drive. There's 3 EVs there, and 3 of them are Teslas besides mine. And one's a Cybertruck. He's making a lot of money and it's a cool truck, whatever. One's a Model Y and another one is a hybrid. And so I'm the only guy in a Ford EV there. Even my boss, who I bought the Mach-E from, was in a Bolt before the Mach-E. And after he left, he went back to a gas Silverado, a diesel Silverado, a half ton. And for him, he's traveling about 80 miles twice a week for his commute. And it's through Deere country. You can't buy a full replacement front bumper for a Lightning, a Silverado, a Cybertruck, none of Rivians. They don't offer that. They're just enough different that stops those people that would put a lift kit and a full replacement front bumper and 35s on their truck, which is exactly what he did to this Silverado. He was getting 26 miles a gallon out of the Silverado and then 21 after he did all his upgrades. So for him, he still gets 20 miles a gallon. He gets to drive a truck. Now he's looking at a Silverado or a Hummer right now, but it's back to that cost. And that's where I was going with my Tesla, the Model 3 or the Model S stuff I've been buying. I'm selling these cars between $10,000 and $12,000 retail after I build them. And so I've got like 4 people right now wanting the 2 Teslas that I have. Chris, you've mentioned interest in one of them just because it's a cool old car. I got a guy today at work that we were talking electric stuff because Deere's into a lot of electrification. And we got to talking about Tesla. And I said, yeah, I saw these cars for $10,000. And he said, no, wait a minute. You can buy a Model S for $10,000. And I was like, you can if you buy one from me. They're between 100
it's still a great ride.
And it's a $80,000 car 10 years ago. I mean, it was their flagship. Now, is it got the tech and the ride and the tightness that say a new Model S or a new Lucid or something like that? No. But
dude, I'll put a 2012 to 2015 Model S up against maybe anything but the refresh 3 and Y. In terms of Tesla, like if you take any Model 3 or Y before the refresh, because the refresh has gotten significantly better. You take one of those old cars, the S still rides nice. It still technologically is probably the top 25% of cars, even those compared to just your standard car out there. It's
pretty affordable. You can just on the used market, not rebuilder, not salvage title, rebuilt, none of that. You are finding with the tax credit, $15,000 Model S's that have 100,000 miles on them. They're $19,000. They're down to 15 after the tax credit. And with Key Savvy, you can get that not having to go through a dealer. I mean, there's some ways to get that tax credit from an individual now through Key Savvy. And so it's kind of an interesting thing that even for me, I'm trying to push a rebuilt title with 10 grand, and it's a tough sell over these guys that are selling a perfect one for 15. But the point is those two are starting to get into the areas where people are going to look at it. You got a 200-mile range car on the highway. If it's got a decent battery, it'll do 250. and they ride good, but the price, like I mentioned earlier, I think there's three things, but when you start getting that price, you know, if you're looking at Ford Fusion or a Chevy Malibu or a Chrysler 300 or a Charger, and you start comparing it to a Model S, the value is there, especially with the free supercharging if you're traveling, and or like we've always said, the home is where the charge is. It's $6 to fill your car up at home. You can't do that with anything else. And Chris, you're feeling that right now with that Dodge. I mean,
yeah, I was just gonna say, man. So the Ram. So I just filled up the tank right before. That's why I was almost a little bit late because I had to stop and fill up the tank, and I forgot how long it took to fill up the tank on a heavy duty truck. But it was funny. It costs so much, and keep in mind, California, I paid still almost $5 a gallon out here, and that's a reduction in price. So
that's $100 bill, wasn't
it? It stopped at $100. Like I didn't even fill up the tank. Like it, and I was like, I don't have time to sit here and swipe this thing again. I got a podcast to do.
I gotta go.
So, but I needed to fill it up. It got most of the way, you know, because I'm gonna take that trip tomorrow. And as a comparison, though, that's $100. If it's $100 a week, that's, you know, $5,000 ish of my normal commute driving that I'm saving. And I've got solar, and the solar's already paid for. So I'm essentially going for free. That's not even if, you know, the rates here for electric are pretty ridiculous too, along with gas.
Yeah.
But kind of the two opposite ends of the spectrum, right? On one hand, I'm saving $5,000 a year over 5 years. That's $25,000. That's significant. And it would be even more money. Well, I guess not, because I paid for my solar. So I'm getting 100% of that. But, you know, if somebody had a more efficient thing like a Y or something, I mean, as opposed to
but you spend how much to get that? I mean, your truck was $70,000 or $80,000 to get
it was
that.
70. Yeah.
Yeah. And
the funny thing, my standard range was 70. The Platinum that I'm getting, the deal is 70. I'm
you
gonna
could
get
have bought a 2.7 F-150 for like 39 grand and got 24 miles to the gallon.
And gotten 700 miles of range out of it. And then, you know, and
that's
so
the hard part.
Tomorrow, my truck is still in the middle of California, out at a place called Keller Ford, which is in Hanford, which is by Lemoore. If anybody knows the air station out there, it was mentioned in Top Gun, for example. It's a big California air station for the Navy. So it's out in that area of the state. My standard range, I couldn't even make it there on one charge. I could go to 100%. Oh, maybe no, I really couldn't. Unless I drove like 65 the whole way. I would have to stop and charge at Harris Ranch and then continue on, which is fine because it's right on the way. The extended range would make it there, but I couldn't make it back. And in this scenario,
go there and back.
It's going to go there and back. And that's important for tomorrow because on Fridays, my son gets out of school early and I've got to be home early in the afternoon. And so for me to drive 3.5 hours there, sign paperwork, drive 3.5 hours back and get here in time for my son.
That's the whole thing right there.
It's the whole idea that time is money. So that money is a fungible thing. It's a commodity. It's, you know, it is most weeks of the year. I'm saving that $100 in gas. And that's my time is money savings because I'm not sitting in a charger. I'm charging it at home. That's why the genius of Ford pivoting to that whole idea of home is where they charge in. That's awesome, right? Giving away the charger, charging at home. That should, in my opinion, that should be 100% of the focus. Other people can buy them. If you want an EV, you can make it work if you're in an apartment, if you've got charging at work. But there is nothing like being able to charge at home, and especially if you have solar, or if especially you're living in a place with sub 10 cent per kilowatt, you know, electricity. That's money, but time is also money. So for people that are in the trades or people that are doing a lot of travel, people that are doing towing, people whose limited time with their family, like your friend who needs to travel, that's worth so much more than you could quantify in money. Or in this case, I couldn't do this trip tomorrow if I was in electric.
Can they docu-sign those to you? Or?
Unfortunately not, because there's a bunch. It's got to be an in-person. I wish it was. I thought in this day and age of technology, I asked that same. They don't even have DocuSign, interestingly. So,
but you know, there would be hundreds of thousands of examples of exactly what you're doing tomorrow that people say, that's why I'm not jumping to electric on just that. And just that.
Yeah.
Now, if it was a 5-minute charge time, you'd be fine.
Sure. I'd stop like I would for gas and I'd move on. And so yeah,
that's the tough sell, right? Because it's both. You have less range and you have to stop longer and it costs more. And it's just like,
you need 3 to 350 legitimate highway range miles. It can't be it's rated at 320, but you really get 260.
And that's not even talking Martin and I's issue when 6 months out of the year or 4, it's cold. And so
elevation, right? Elevation, if you're
wind.
So that's the thing. When they rate you at 350 miles, 320 miles, when I took Joe's truck back to Florida, I'm charging from 5%, and most guys don't push their Lightning to 5% to 80 because I don't want to charge past 80 when I'm not towing. That's 160 to 175 miles of range at 50 degrees outside. And that's what it was. So
and you're talking a 37 or 38 minute charge there?
Yeah. And if you get into the headwinds, it's worse. And I've never had a gas vehicle that I worried about what way the wind's coming from. And now I've got apps on my screen that show me the wind. And I'm always posting about it. Like, oh, I got a tailwind. I'm getting 2.3. The people who are driving gas cars don't give a shit about that. They're just driving it. If it gets 22 instead of 24 or 19 instead of 22, they don't care. And I get that. And that's the reason I think those kinds of things, the stress of having to think about that with your vehicle. And I asked Kevin today, we actually had this conversation or yesterday, the guy that I was talking about that was going to come on. I said, what's the thing that would get you? And he said, when the conveniences that I'm used to in the truck that I have now are equal in the electric, I will switch. He said, I don't care if it's nuke in the truck. If the conveniences are what I have now or better, I will switch, but I'm not going to switch until it's better. And I think honestly, like you said, that mindset, the mindset has to be as good as what I'm used to now or better.
Yeah. I think for me, if I had to rank them, I think clearly number one above any and everything is price. There's a reason people shop at Walmart. There's a reason people go to Costco. They want value. Cost is the driver. It's anytime you have something that is a great value, it is going to sell. And you only have to look as far as whenever like Colorado would do those crazy $99 lease deals, or if you look at the Honda Prologue, a lot of those are lease deals. They sold like crazy. And when you get these affordable vehicles, I think that is a huge benefit when the cost gets down, when it becomes parity or better. And then I think something that Paul was hinting at kind of in the opposite way, which was this idea of resentment, this idea of politics. There is a thing in marketing called social proof. And it's the reason they like to put things into sitcoms or popular shows or influencers or all these things. And there needs to be a social proof that this thing is okay. Whatever this fashion statement, right? Maybe it's bell bottoms, or maybe it's the long shorts, the basketball players. It has to be a social proof that says that person is like me, right? In some way. And that's why you have to be diverse. And when you do these things with marketing, right? That person, I relate to them, right? In whatever way that might be, political, socioeconomic, gender, all of that, right? I need to relate. We are tribal people. There's a great example that I love from one of my favorite authors, Simon Sinek. He talks about this, and he's like, the further away you get from home, the larger your tribe gets. So if you're at the grocery store and someone's like, and you hear somebody say they live on your street, you're like, oh, I live on that street. And you have that connection to the tribe. Or if you go to Disneyland and someone's like, they're from your town, I'm from that town. Mm-hmm. Then you leave the country and someone's like, I'm from the US, I'm from the US. If you went into outer space and someone was like, I'm from Earth, I'm from Earth. The further you get from home, the wider your tribe becomes. And so you need that association. You need to feel connected to something. So if you don't feel a connection to the politics of California, and you don't feel a connection to the wealth and the amount of money and the taxes and all the stuff in Cal, you don't feel any connection to that product. You need that social proof that it's okay for you to have that. And for a short window, there seemed to be some momentum there that everybody, including like me and Jesse and Josh, we all bought into it 100%. When Ford thought they were going to be selling 100,000 F-150s, Tesla thought they were going to be selling 250,000 Cybertrucks. They had a million reservations. people during the pandemic were
I
buying.
think somebody said they had like 2.1 million reservations for Cybertruck.
At some point, yeah. I mean, I've known people that had multiple Cybertruck reservations, right? And
Somebody
there
had
was
50. Didn't like
'cause
somebody
they were
had
gonna,
50.
yeah, they were gonna rent them and
Was
all
it
that kind of
kilowatts?
stuff.
Yeah, like so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might have been. It might have been. Yeah,
Mhm.
and we all. I remember thinking on the podcast we were talking like, Toyota doesn't get it. What are they doing? Like they don't understand. They're going to be left behind. And then fast forward, people are more pivoting towards what Toyota was looking like, and China's still cranking along doing their things. But at the end of the day, that social acceptance, that social proof that I, as a Midwestern person, I need to see another Midwestern person using it the way I would. I need to see someone that looks like me, is doing like me, that I feel safe now to buy this product, and it has to make sense. It's got to be priced right.
And I'll be honest, I think I saw that as earlier just because I'm 33. You know, I don't have friends that are like ready to make this jump. My friends are just buying their first house, you know, especially with the way things are right now. My God. You know, like they're like, what? Like, if they didn't buy in 2020, they're looking at a 8% rate going, what the heck? I can only buy $150,000 house. The last thing they're worried about is buying a $80,000 EV. That's just,
but see, anything $80,000. You know, they're not buying an $80,000 King Ranch Super Duty.
But out here in California, where every third car is a Tesla, it seems, right? And they'll call it the California Camry for how prevalent they are out here. It's especially in all the tech folks around here in the Bay Area, like everybody was wanting to buy a Tesla, even when they were like $60,000. Like that was a social status. That was it was kind of like you made it, and you really couldn't buy the Model S back then because it was $140,000. So when the 3 became available, and it kind of looked like a little mini S, and you were like, I have a Tesla. And to this day, there are people that if you say Tesla, think it's $100,000 car, and it isn't. There are lots of people who think Tesla is a luxury, high-priced item, and they don't realize that the 3 and the Y are as affordable as they are.
That's
it's still
exactly
seen as a
why
prestige.
I sold that first Model S that I built to my brother-in-law. His wife's from Rio de Janeiro. They live here, and his son is 18 from there. And he told all his friends that he got a Tesla, and you'd have thought he was a prince, this rich. Yeah. It's a $10,000, 200,000 mile piece of crap. I mean, it's a nice car. Don't get me wrong, but it's wore out. But it's going to last him for a long time. But you would have thought, he said, they have this in Brazil. They have this thought that if you're driving a Mercedes or a Tesla, you're like rich. You have this royalty about you. And I got to be honest, 5 years ago, I had that same thoughts. These people that drive Teslas, they're like ritzy, prissy. I can't relate to them. And that's exactly why I've gotten into the F-150s, because the F-150 Lightning is getting a little bit of that you have to look a certain way, and you belong to a certain group that in the Midwest is not accepted. You know, especially being in a refinery town, those guys see my truck and I don't get them to talk to me, let alone actually look at the truck for what it might be. That's why I always wear boots and jeans and a cowboy hat when I'm out driving the truck around, trying, because number one, I love it, but I'll wear that cowboy hat, turn the headrest around backwards on purpose in the truck, so they think, oh, he's a regular guy. He's not some weirdo or whatever they think that they're looking at. Because
they got to get. I'm telling you, they need to make a modern day Knight Rider with an electric vehicle as the protagonist, right? There needs to be more electric vehicles that are just.
Well, they did the Italian job, and no one knew that those minis were electric.
Yeah, because the mini looks exactly. They
were sick, but no one knew. No one had any idea.
Going back to those crazy years of 2021, 22, where everything was on fire and everybody thought this was just going to go. It was just inevitable. Like this is just, Ford was talking like gas was just going to stop. It was going to get shuttered eventually. Like they were talking.
Dude, I was there. Like man, it was Lightning Strikes event was like nothing else I've ever been. The excitement, the momentum. We were going to build 100,000 Lightnings here, per year.
Yeah, I was worried. I could remember worrying, man, I shouldn't buy the 22 because the 23 is going to have the new Ford. The stuff that's kind of out now with the Android Automotive, that was rumored. Digital experience. Thank you. That's what it was called. Yeah. Do you remember early on that was supposed to be in 23?
23.
Yep.
And so I remember thinking
It was
oh,
like job 2, but it was coming,
Yes.
and
so turn around and I'm like, it's probably the best thing I did to buy it when I did, because then prices got crazy and no real significant
but maybe
changes.
not actually.
They
In the
will.
end. yeah.
But it's and then I think to those days too, like so many people in my orbit, like at least 8 people in multiple states were like, they were feeling that momentum too. And they would reach out and they'd be asking questions. I know at least 3 people that bought Mach-E's. I got a couple people that bought Lightnings, a couple people that bought Teslas. I have so many. I never owned a Tesla, and I have so much Tesla referral credits from people buying Teslas using because I have the Powerwall and that stuff. And at the time, it was Tesla Energy was considered a product you get a referral. So I've got a grandfathered referral code, and I got like stacks. I can't turn the camera; it won't show with the background, but I got so much Tesla swag, Tesla luggage, Tesla umbrella, Tesla. I have a little mini car, like Tesla. I got a pile of stuff I'm gonna, give away for the NorCal EVs clubs and try to raise money for it, all from Tesla. Because everybody, but then in the last year or so, not a single new person in my orbit has gone EV in the last year. Nobody. It's all
they lost the momentum, and that's exactly what I'm. That's exactly like my guys are that way too, and they see me doing it, and I tell them I put 80,000 miles on it, and they're like, "How did you do that?" I'm like, "Well, you just drive," but none of them get past that. Those 3 things. Number 1, it's expensive. That, Chris, I think you nailed it. That's the biggest stop. And number 2 is the charge, and then followed by the range. And they're not going to. Most people, I mean, you guys have had this question a million times. Well, how far can you go in that thing? And then, well, how long does it take to charge it? And when you say
questions.
260 miles and it's 45 minutes, they are done. They stop listening. They'll still talk to you.
But I try not to tell them 45, because I mean, if you're telling I get 45 minutes, but honestly, like I just looked up my charge from today. So I got down to 15%, charged up to 63%. That was enough to get me home. And I didn't charge on the way there. And that was 25 minutes.
But
so
to argue with those people, they can do 600 miles of range in 5 minutes. So it's hard to argue with them about that.
Right. But I try to tell them, like, on our stops, on average, we really do stop about 24 to 28 minutes on average. That's, our average stop. We're not going all the way to, zero
all 4
or,
New Orleans were 30 minutes. All 4 of them.
Yeah.
So we had 2 hours of charging going down, and that's pretty normal. So in 30 minutes, you're back in the truck, and then you need another 12 minutes. You're like, oh, we can sit here for 12 minutes and talk, and that's what we did. It takes half of that time. So I really think that I think the target ought to be 15 or less. And really, we're not that far away. If the Lightning had launched with an 800-volt architecture, that 44 minutes would have went to 22, because it would have charged twice as fast. And the Silverado is actually doing that, but they put such a massive battery in it. It's over almost 100 kilowatts bigger than the Lightning. It's charging in the same time. And you can go 6 hours on a charge, really 4.5 from 10 to 80%. But that's a big thing. And honestly, it's made me want to switch. If it hadn't been for all the problems, I probably would have already. The cost has stopped me more than anything. And now, seeing that you can buy the LTs in the 50s that have Super Cruise, I'm like, I'm thinking about it. And I don't want to switch away from the F-150 because it's such a solid platform. I just, that's the hardest thing. But back to, why don't I just drive a 2.7 EcoBoost that I can pull a trailer with? And, I can't do it. But a lot of guys, they're not going to make it. They're not going to drive an EV. And I hear it time and time again.
Yeah. And I think what Chris mentioned, too, when, he had a good first, kind of look at it, a lot of, when you get into an ICE newer truck, you see that it's nice. They're not, they're not the old ICE trucks I think a lot of us think about, right? We're like, oh, that 2009, I know I'm guilty of it. But these trucks are connected trucks, they're completely, they're basically the same as our Lightnings, especially the 12-inch, display. It's really very similar, other than powertrain, obviously.
Jace, I got people who hate that. They want an
So-
87 Ford pickup with a manual
Yeah.
knob and a tape player. They don't want these big screens and all this crap. And I think that's the hard part, because guys like you and I, we're guys, we like this stuff, but most people, my son doesn't want a big screen. He's got one of those little, about that big, and he's a 19 F-150, and he said it's big enough. I don't want any bigger. I asked him, you want to throw a Tesla screen in there for $600? And his answer was, hell no. I want it simple.
Yeah.
I want it easy. So I get that
Yeah.
side too. And the Lightning doesn't really offer that. It's a tech involved truck, even in a Pro. It's pretty tech
The
involved.
Slate is calling his name.
I mean, I
Maybe
think
so.
though, really, the entire F-150 line is that. There's really, every single F-150 now has the 12-inch or up.
Yeah.
There is no, there is no 8-inch anymore. So,
Yeah.
it's interesting for sure. But I think you have to get your butts in the seats to really get why electric is popular among the people who love electric. But that's difficult in and of itself to do, right? Like,
Well,
there's
that told
just
me.
Chris and I were talking about it the other day. There's most guys are just not going to experience electric because they just don't really have like a reason to. There's no reason for someone, and just like we were talking about Ford Digital Experience, there's no reason for a Ford EV driver to drive a vehicle with Ford Digital Experience, because it's in only the Expedition, the Explorer, and whatever else. And so they're not going to experience Ford's latest software, because why would they? They don't want to drive a nice vehicle. They want to drive an EV.
So here's an interesting question. With Ford announcing that they're kind of abandoning the zonal architecture, which was really electric focused, and and kind of going with this, for lack of a better word, hybrid. It's a hybrid system. It's going to be it's going to have some core processing that is internal, if I understand correctly what I saw, that's controlled in-house by Ford, but still going to have a bunch of tier 1 partners doing the majority of modules. But the core, important ones will be done in-house by Ford, but it will still be that lots of modules with partners, and not the zonal, more efficient or more elegant that Tesla, Lucid, and Rivian go with. And I understand why they're doing it, because they're doing it so they can do it across multiple platforms. They can do it with diesel, with gas, with series hybrid, with traditional hybrid, and of course with electric.
Commercial,
fleet, and all that stuff with software, and all of them. Of course, you can always go to your phone and hotspot off your phone, but for even if 25% of the people sign up for the digital, Ford's biggest profit is fleet and software. Like, that's where their profit is. And so if you can get their entire lineup completely in this digital experience in a way that is easy for them to control with what matters, and they still have their tier 1 partners, and suddenly all of them look similar to each other. So here's the question: does that make it easier to transition to EV, because now it feels so familiar? Like, it feels like, hey, there's an electric, it feels familiar. Or does it further delay it, because some of the unique things that only EV offered will now be available in all of the things you normally couldn't get them in? And
I think each manufacturer has their own layers, which is the crazy part about it, right? Like Ford's, like we just talked about, only ICE, the latest ICE offerings have Ford Digital Experience. Okay, well, then you have GM, who's like, well, only EVs aren't going to get CarPlay and Android Auto, but our ICE vehicles are going to keep it.
See, that's what's interesting, because Tesla doesn't do that. That's the difference in there. And I think if you look at this, like I was going to bring this up a minute ago, but look at this. That, I think, is a lot of tech. To outsell the Corolla and the RAV4 and the F-150 by a slight margin. The Y.
Remember, but the F-150 is only sold in Canada and the United States. Model Y sold globally.
It isn't. Yeah. But it's this is a world thing. So if you look at just the world, that these numbers all flip around. But the Y is such a pop. And I think a lot of it was what we're talking about.
Everyone's losing you, Martin.
When you get in, they're all that expensive.
It's starting to get choppy there. We need to get you a Starlink, man. Let's start a GoFundMe.
I ordered a new router, and it's supposed to be better, but I'm not sure.
I will say, I think that chart is going to look very different in 2025. That's
I'm actually surprised.
My bold prediction.
I'm surprised there's no Chinese brand. I'm not sure how much I believe that chart. Like, there's Chinese brands that I would think would be on that
BYD
chart.
was on there. They were like number 6.
Oh, were they? Oh, I missed it. Sorry.
BYD's on there. That's going to look different. You're right. And this next BYD is going to blow it up.
But again, yeah, I agree. But BYD is still expanding. Like they really were focused on China, and now they're really expanding. I mean, we see them in Aruba. It's crazy. It's like the the brands that you see where the tariffs haven't eliminated the competition.
I tell you, guys, it's going to be super interesting the next couple of years when you start seeing. I want to know how well the Ram Charger is going to sell and how well the Scout Terra is going to sell in the truck market. And the reason I say that is the Scout Terra is supposed to be affordable, 50 to 60 grand. I think it's going to sell like gangbusters if they can produce them and they're good quality. I'm still.
I mean, what vehicle are we buying next after Lightning? I mean, I'm not sure we're buying like what we bought now. I'm not so sure. I see EREV in our future. For better or for worse. I don't know how much I love that, how much I don't love that.
It's hard to argue with you because just as hard-headed as I was about, hell no, I'm not ever driving a Prius. Now I'm the same hard-headedness about I'm not going back to gas. So to say never is exactly true because I'm building a generator to put in the bed of my Lightning right now.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't you just build it, have the auto manufacturers build it for you where you can take advantage of the electric, which is what we do every day. Chris, your example of what you drive around town, not spending $100 a week where you're $6 to fill the thing up at home. And maybe it's 12 or 15 in California, but we're here about $6 or $7 to fill it up. And then if I want to take it on a road trip, just go. And so talking with, for instance, my friend Kevin, he would buy a Ram Charger. He hates Dodge Stellantis, so he won't buy one of those. But if Ford was launching a 2.7 liter with a 130 kilowatt generator series hybrid where he didn't have to stop, he's in. In fact, we are looking for him a power boost right now. I've tried to get him to jump on board with the Lightning. It's not happening. But he's all in on a power boost because at least it gives him still the same F-150 he likes and he's used to. So we're going to build one. If it may be my first power boost.
Yeah. I may be naive on this, but I still believe that there is, in the next 5 years, which is a long time, there's going to be a leap in battery technology. That is because, I was just at ACT Expo with the fellas and one of my most I don't say most deflating, but a little deflating. There was, aside from the amount of hydrogen, lots of hydrogen there. Shout out Jesse, who loves it. There's this company called Harbinger, and Maki Vlog did a little profile on them, and I've got a video coming about what they're doing with FedEx and some others. Bimbo Brands bread. I don't know if you guys know them.
I think it's Bimbo, but
Bimbo.
Bimbo sounds great.
Yeah. Bimbo bread.
Bimbo.
I don't know what their actual name is. So at the Harbinger started as a pure EV play. That's all it was, pure BEV, and they obviously felt the pivot because they, FedEx uses them indirectly with a company called Exos. Exos buys the Harbinger chassis and then puts the shells on top of them and all of their software and stuff. And so when some of our biggest ground vehicles are actually Harbinger underneath it, well, Harbinger came, they do all the Bimbo bread. I don't know what the actual name of that place is, but they've got like 1,900 sold to them of these BEV vehicles for the next few years. So they're selling the BEVs, but at the show, they took essentially the exact same chassis and they threw an inline 4-cylinder motor into it. And it's a series hybrid. It's a rev. It's all the, and it's otherwise the same exact thing. But now I've got the maintenance of that. And I was thinking as a fleet customer, FedEx was a little excited by it because our battery electrics will only get about 150 miles of range at that size of a box truck. This thing with just that little inline 4 will get 500. And that's a game changer for a fleet manager. But then I'm like, the whole point was not to have that maintenance and to get under there. This thing is literally in between the rails behind the battery pack. And they're going to put a hatch into the bottom of the floor so you can open up, you can maintain it.
Then you start questioning why. And I will say that there is a why, and there is a reason for that why. So For instance, John Deere, and this is not inside, this is public knowledge. You can go buy a wheel loader, one of the big scoop wheel loaders. That's a series hybrid. We offer a couple of them, and the upside to those is fuel. It's 20 to 40% less fuel. So if you're running a wheel loader all day long, loading snow, loading gravel, loading manure, loading scrap, and it's burning nearly half as much fuel, that is a huge benefit, because you can take and run a smaller gasoline or smaller diesel engine or gas in a E-Rev and running it at the same RPM and all that. That's why Edison, I think, up in Canada is going to do so well with his stuff, because it's a much smaller diesel. They're peak shaving the power demands off of the battery and then plugging everything else in, just refill the battery, or what you're not doing right to the truck. My situation that I'm doing with the generator is not the ultimate situation, because I really need to be putting about 50 kilowatts of power in the truck. Then I would pretty much be unlimited with range, not towing. But with that said, I can only do about 18 to 19 with the onboard chargers. So will it be a range extender? Yes. It's not a full, there's going to be more definitions coming as we go along, because the size of the generator on board will dictate the range and the freedom of which we travel in that car. You know, so if you have a 20 kilowatt generator or 130, like they're putting in the Ram Charger, that's going to change everything. So you can, if I get in a Ram Charger, I can drive to Chris's house and never stop except for gas. But in my truck, I'm going to stop, but I'm going to stop less. So it's one of those, if you really start doing the math, and I posted a while back some charts on the trip to California that we're going to take versus with the generator, you know, as built versus the generator. And it cut me down from like 11 stops down to like 6 or 7. It wasn't a huge game changer on time.
Are you going to have some way to, because this thing's so experimental, right? Are you going to have some way to shunt it or disconnect it if it starts to act in a weird way?
Oh, yeah.
Where you can just go back to the pure.
Oh, yeah. Well, you just turn the generator off. You just turn the generator off. There's disconnects in there. We've got all that stuff, the safeties. I was 3 hours with Zach last night working through some of that. And yeah, if it doesn't work, turn it off. And then you're just back to charging like normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally just teed into the AC input of the onboard chargers. So those AC inputs that you would get from your house, we're just putting power there instead of from the side of the truck. So really, I'm not doing anything different than you would if your truck was sitting at home and you were charging it off of a generator. And people do that.
So that the truck's inverters will function while the truck is in motion. It's not turning those off somehow.
Oh, the truck does. Absolutely. That's the secret sauce and what we're doing to be able to intercept those signals and then watch. Not only are we intercepting those signals and changing them to trick it to what it is, when you plug into a wall charger, a wall unit at home, it's sending signals, and I don't want to get into the gory details, but it's sending signals to the truck to let it know how big that is. Is it 30 watt? Is it 30 kilowatt? Or so I'm saying that wrong. Is it 30 amp? Is it 40 amp? Is it 80 amp? It knows. And we have to say that as well. We have to tell the truck what size generator it is connected to. And there'll be some programming for that. So if we get into a situation where something's going awry, it'll just turn it off.
Are you going to have like an iPad up with your OBD2 port that's showing all your temperatures and
it's going to be on the screen. It's going to be through Car Scanner. We're working with the Car Scanner guys. It's probably going to use Car Scanner right on the screen. So you're going to see the things that you need to see. Now, I don't really need to have temperatures because those are right on the instrument. The battery and the motors are right there for you. If something gets hot, just like it would with the truck, it'll tell us. But we are going to have a few monitors that you're going to watch, like when the generator is on and how much is it producing. I like, you don't want it to charge. If you pull into the charger and you charge it to 100%, you don't want the generator running. There'll be some safeties for that. And if it gets down to 5%, I don't know yet, but I don't think we want it running at 5%. There's not a big risk there. You could probably drive the truck at 50 miles an hour for as long as you put gas in it. If you're running on pure generator, because the truck at 50 miles an hour is only pulling about 15, 20 kilowatts. And
it'll be funny to have you're driving down the road and on your driver display, it's going to presumably show that you're charging. It's going to show the little, kilowatts.
Oh, it absolutely is. And so that regen, there will be times that I'm driving as slow and it's in the green all the time. And so what it will end up being is instead of showing, for instance, on the Lightning, for us Lightning guys that are listening, instead of showing like 2 miles per kilowatt hour, I'm hoping it's going to show like 3 or 3.1, 3.2 as we're going down the road. It's the
reverse. It's the reverse Ben Westby. It's where Ben runs his when he's not really driving, and so it makes it look like his efficiency is trash because it thinks. Which, by the way, that's one of the first things I can't wait to experiment with, because I've always wanted, and nobody's answered this. The answer is out there. Somebody just needs to do it. Because with the new one, you can. Well, heck, Jace, you can do it. 24 did
we
that.
could do it. Yep.
Yeah, you could do it. The like if you run it now with it off, does it no longer register like time the way it would? Does it keep your you should do that.
Yeah, I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, because that's
we haven't run the house yet. That's usually our big, the only reason why we'd use it.
There's a workaround for that. Just tell it you've got a trailer connected, and it'll charge it to. You just make a trailer profile that just says truck off, and it'll just put it to that one, and then when you can just put it back to the regular. That way to mess up your EV efficiency of the truck without a trailer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
That's gonna be interesting times, man. But yeah, I guess you can never say never, but throw this back in my face if I ever switch. But I don't think I'll ever go back to gas unless there's a financial reason that I'm just have no choice. It's
for us, I see it sort of like we would have. I was talking with Ford about this exact scenario today, actually. Like, I could see us having one EREV vehicle so that if we wanted to take our boat further than we usually do, that would, enable that. Like, let's say we want to take it up to my parents in Northern Michigan, that would, boom, that makes that doable. Justin's mom just got a place in Sandusky. That's further than the 12 miles we drive to Lake Erie usually, so that's a good 50, 60 mile drive. I mean, so I could see people with campers. I'm sure, that's huge, you could just run that thing if you absolutely had to. But I could see us doing an EREV and then a full BEV something, whatever that was. That I just feel like that would be the ultimate flexibility if we needed it. But then again, I think about, okay, so what if we have an alternative to buy and it's a 350, 400 mile true BEV? Would I feel compelled to buy an EREV then? I don't know. Maybe not as much. If the BEV only offers 250, 300 and, full highway mile range, maybe, and I can get 6, 7 out of an EREV, then I'm kind of like, well, maybe I would go that. So I think we got to see where we're at. I hope you're right, Chris, that there's going to be a big battery breakthrough. That's what we need. That if we want full, 500 mile range EVs, that's what we're going to need. I mean, we just saw, look at Tesla. They just canceled the range extender. It's not happening.
Yeah, they don't need it.
And you don't need it, but also it wasn't. They had already revised it. They said 470, then now it was 440. I mean,
now it's zero.
I don't think it was working. I don't think financially it made sense. I don't think they're selling enough Cybertrucks, to be completely honest, to sell a range extender, because the take rate on that had to be less than 5%.
I'm hesitant to ever quote the media because Lord knows that they're not factually accurate half the time, but they say, whoever they are, that they have like 3 months of inventory of Cybertrucks sitting around. And I'm frankly shocked that they bothered coming out with the single motor the way they did. Because they stripped that thing down so much that it's like, and for 70,000, like
64, if you can get the tax credit, it's not cheap. Like, it's not 38,000.
It's not.
And so, if you're going to make it a work truck, then you take all the outlets out of it. Like, it just, doing? Yeah, it's that like. It's jarring for people, and I know there are very influential Cybertruck people that are not happy right now.
It's a crazy choice, and so I do think battery stuff is going to get better, but I do think it's 5 years away, and I think you kind of hinted at it, Jace, that what are we going to see from the T3, 27, 28 Ford stuff? I do think there is a third generation before we get what I had hoped Generation 2 would be. I do think Generation 2 is going to be pivoted to smaller and mid-sized BEV series hybrid for the big dogs. I'm curious what will happen with Lightning, because they do have such a fleet presence. I see them so often. I posted about my solar, the people that do my solar and HVAC use it.
Yeah.
A bunch of our
I saw a couple of them today on the way to Dearborn. I mean, I will say one thing that's interesting about that is ICE F-150 goes on a usually it's like a 7 to 8 to 9 year cycle where they that's a full cycle, not mid-year, cycle refresh, but a full 8 to 9 year cycle. They've obviously, they've extended that now. And that timeline now sort of lines up late 2027, early 2028. Now that timeline all of a sudden lines up with T3 again. It didn't. Yeah. It was completely different. We were going to have T3 in 2025/2026. Now 2027, which I could easily see pushing to 2028. So now all of a sudden you're back on track for when F-150 gets, its big refresh. So
does it just, do they go BEV or do they just go series hybrid, gas, diesel when it comes to that platform? Or do you have
think it's going to be EREV. I don't think the T3 is going to be full battery, and I hate to say that because
I think T3 will be. I think T3
I don't think it is.
I think that's midsize.
I think the Lightning cells are proving that it won't be.
See, but what is T3? So, because, and I know people that I've talked to that will tell you T3 has changed 5 times.
Oh,
so so what we're talking about T3 right now could be T4 or 5, or we don't
T3.7.
Yeah, it's like
it's just like Dodge canceling the Ram Rev. I mean, they've pivoted, and then they evidently had. I don't know if you guys saw TFL truck. They were working on a big battery range extended dually, and canceled.
Yes, and they took huge supplier hits. I mean, the size of what Ford took with the.
Well, that only came to light because of the lawsuits. Because between the suppliers were building up ready for this, and it got named in that lawsuit. That's the only reason we even knew about it. So these things are happening in the background.
Imagine how much momentum has died that Ford and Dodge are eating the cost of entire programs being shuttered. I mean, it's billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And it's cheaper to shutter it than it is to. Now, I still think
FNV4 alone, you're talking north of probably 5 to 10 billion.
Yeah. I mean,
alone.
But this is going to drive
factory. Go ahead.
But this stuff is going to drive the used market because this is happening the way it is, and the Lightning's going the way it is. Lightning used market right now is really, I think, pretty strong. Go find.
We saw that Justin's truck went up. I mean, Carvana said this truck is in demand. Now is a good time to sell it if you want to sell it because it's best. It was down to 37.5. And then it went up, no matter, it didn't, we added miles and it went up to 41. And we were like, okay, I think we're going to take it.
All of this was a factor when I was looking for my truck. I couldn't find a truck. I was finding 23s. I was specifically looking for late 23s that were often registered in November, December, even, through March of 24. So I could get more warranty. And I was not finding them for anything I found less than 50-ish. Maybe I'd get a 49.5 or something, right? Or, 51, 52. Anything I found less than that, every single one of them when I would call was a buyback. It was the only reason it was at 45 or 46 was it was a buyback. Yeah. And Martin, thank you. Martin would research it and he'd be like, oh yeah, here's the whole history. Here's what was going on. And then, hey, EV Geek is on. Boy, and I'll tell you what, it's a good partner show to this one. When you get done listening to us talk about EV versus gas, EV Geek just posted what are the top 5 things EV drivers want. It's an awesome, one of my favorite recent videos. I really liked it. It was very cool. So make sure you guys check that out. But yeah, it was. And then the next jump from the low 50s was all the way up to 59 to 62. And those were used 24s. And then you had to be really careful. Also, you had to, when you were looking at 24s, you had to search and make sure it had the 9.6 Pro Power. And you had to go and get the window sticker. And I would say 70% of them that I would check did not have the Pro Power, the 9.6 Pro Power, which was a non-starter for me if it didn't have that. And then suddenly I turn around, well, if I'm already paying 62 for one of these used, and I can get this guy's making me a deal on a $70,000 Platinum, and it's already got the spray and bed liner that I wanted. It's already the color that my existing one was. And then exactly what you were talking about, Jace, it played into it. I'm like, well, if Ford in 27, 28 doesn't actually have a new refreshed Lightning in the way that I see the Lightning, then I might as well have a new truck that I hold on to for 5 years until whatever that battery tech is. It's almost like a hedge. And to your point, guys, if the used market goes up, if they stop producing it, maybe my Platinum with max tow and all this other stuff, maybe the trade-in on it or the selling price, the value goes up. Maybe not. Maybe I made the wrong move. Maybe I would have been better off going with used and paying less. But I kind of, as I balanced it all, I was like, I think it sets me up with, now I don't use tow and, forklifts, not forklifts, everything outdoors in Jeeps talking about his buddy never tows. And he always talks about how EVs can't tow. And Martin obviously just proves that. I don't tow at all. So what do I need with the max tow package? That was with an eye towards trade-in later when somebody would find value in it in 3 or 4 years.
That's like buying a 4-wheel drive. That's the same thing. Nobody really needs a 4-wheel drive in the lower half of the United States. It's just not something that's there. But the trade-in value of it makes it worth way more.
It worth it. So that's that's my thought. If it 27, 28 comes and they don't really have a new refreshed incredible Lightning, and hopefully they do, but if they don't, all right, at least I'm in a long-term truck that I'm gonna love. And
even if they don't,
in that 70, I mean, but even at 70, Chris, you're not gonna be underwater like we're like you said, you bought a 70,000 standard range, Lariat, and now you're buying a $70,000 Platinum. It's a totally different ball game nowadays. I mean, that's what got us to bite, is that the prices finally started to tip where you can find the deals and make it actually worth it to jump. And that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case for a long time, but it was getting close enough, especially if you could lease. If you could lease, even more so.
Yeah. And I hear you, like, guys talking about not towing and the use of the truck. Jace, I heard you like, well, maybe we could buy an EREV to move to. I'm like, here I am, 80,000 miles, and all I do is tow, and it's long distance. Like, when you start talking about, for me, when you start talking about going back to gas, this is common. And this is why I'm not, because that does that so well. You can't get another half-ton truck to do that.
I'd love to see
you have to go to a 3/4 ton.
That's such a cool shot of I've not seen that shot before, I don't think.
This is the last stop.
This is a different angle. Yeah.
We've
seen the other angle, but
St. Louis, with the Lightning pulling the XLT Lightning. And I got to tell you, it's so comfortable and so nice. When I think about that truck having a gas motor up front, losing the frunk, and paying for all the dual systems and having to listen to it, it kind of makes me sick to my stomach because I don't want to go back. But I need to not stop 5 or 6 times from St. Louis to Southeast Kansas. This was one of those days that even me, as big a supporter as I am, was ready to take a diesel just to get there and get home.
Well, you had wind, you had all kinds of crazy.
It was a terrible day. And then I turn around a month later or 3 weeks later and go to New Orleans with it and have a 2.3 mile per kilowatt hour at 70 experience. We ran 90 miles an hour for 70 miles on the turnpike in Oklahoma and got 2.0. Like, fantastic day. So
I think that's the problem too, is if wind is, for normal folk looking to buy an EV, if the conditions really play that big of a role, it's a struggle for people to jump on board with that. I mean, and we see it with the weather, like temperature wise too, not just wind, not on a normal day, but we see there are days when we drive up north and we're at -5, and so
1.0 mile per kilowatt hour, right?
There's been times 0.9, and we're not.
You guys probably remember the post when the Lightning first came out. There was a guy, I don't remember where he was at. He had a big Malibu wake boat, and he got 60 miles of range out of that truck, and it was the headline everywhere. Lightning tows only 60 miles, and the guy was freaking out, and it was just and it's the same exact truck that I just showed you pulling 110. It's all about how you use it, the use case. I tell people, don't pick up a hammer expecting it to be a screwdriver or vice versa. Yeah. There is a different tool. So you have to realize that. But we are not ready to have to differentiate one truck from another, whether it's gas or electric, that one's a hammer and one's a screwdriver. We're not mainstream with that. I think that's the biggest thing here.
Well,
So-
it reminds me when you were bringing that up about one of the buybacks that I had you look at. If you remember, the feedback on it was that they it didn't get the range because they were expecting it to get the 330, and it was getting like 312 or something,
316 or something. It was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, so
Crazy.
you know that was it was somebody that
But
just
you plug it into the navigation that you're in a truck, you get in your Lightning and it says mine says 333 right now. That's what my truck says. And that's after I tow. It resets.
Yeah,
and
they changed the algorithm like 3 or 4 times by now.
Right.
I think.
And I get in it and I go to Tulsa last night. And as soon as I touch that navigation, boom, 260. Like immediately 260. It knows. And it's really accurate. But if if you did your planning around that number, and you're like, well, it's 330 miles to Dallas. We're going to stop from Kansas to Dallas, and we're going to stop about here. And then you plug it in, and it says 260, and you're like, uh-oh. And then you get a headwind, and you're now really more like 200 or 175. Mm-hmm. Now you're freaking out a little bit because it makes you have to plan. And I honestly think that is a lot of it. Once guys get in the truck, they realize you have to plan with these trucks. You can't just get in it and go. And that's a little bit better with Tesla network, but it's not perfect because we don't have access to their entire network. Whereas like if you're in a Cybertruck, it will do it for you. You don't have to do a single bit of planning to drive it from here to California. It will tell you, or reroute you. You're most likely not going to run out of juice. Now the winter changes that. I know for up north that's
and even for us up north, Tesla's supercharger network's just not good enough. We have to rely on CCS still, which sounds crazy. I'm sure to like people like Chris who are like, what do you mean? But like,
I did the same thing. The New Orleans trip
doesn't exist. Even V2s, they're very limited.
Yeah, there is not a Tesla supercharger for us in New Orleans. There's not one there.
Really?
Mm-hmm. It is a 150 or a 250 that's not turned on. The closest one is 15 miles away from the town, outside of the town, back towards Baton Rouge. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And I had to go sit at a Honda charge point, a Honda dealership charge point charger at like 80 kilowatts for 45 minutes just to get me around town.
I will tell you, the good news is they are still activating chargers. Like
Tesla, you mean?
Yeah, we had a new V3 that was actually, we were going to test it with Ford the morning that Tesla launched the adapter with Ford, and we showed up to that site and there was miscommunication maybe between Tesla and Ford, and that site was not live, and so we had to go to another site to do our test, and it later turned out that site still never went live. We kind of expected it to go in a day or two. Tesla never turned that site on until a month ago or two. But
that was the thing.
Crazy.
That's where I was going with that, Jace. And when I drove that Cybertruck a couple weeks ago, I got to tell you, I was never a big fan on, because I know how Tesla is. I mean, I like a Tesla, but it's not the same as the F-150. And when I'm saying that, I'm saying the Model 3 and the Model S. They're just not the same as an F-150 Lightning. But the Cybertruck was in terms of quiet for me, because I drove it enough that
you seem to really like it.
I really did.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking at it for the tech of the truck. I don't give a shit about the politics or any of that other stuff that everybody. I'm just looking at it for what it was. And man, was it impressive. The turning radius, it had huge blind spots. That was a downside. I couldn't believe the blind spots. But
large.
I'm not bashing it because I think it was an awesome truck. It brings too much attention. I don't want that kind of attention right now. Yeah. I think that's going to settle down eventually. But what really got me thinking was, man, I wouldn't have to plan anything to go on a road trip. Just plug it in. I have the entire Tesla supercharger network plus all the network that I could use for CCS, right? It's still there. I just don't know how. Now, there's somebody's going to tell me. I was actually playing with the Model S tonight. How do you add a CCS charge?
Yeah, they have them, but
I couldn't figure it out.
Kind of why, I'll be honest, I actually, again, was talking to Ford about this today. I kind of love being a Ford driver right now. First of all, because I think, number one, Ford has done the best job out of anybody. Obviously not Tesla. We'll, set them off to the side here for this conversation. But they've done the best job with the Blue Oval Charge Network. It is spectacular. And I know you road trip quite a bit more than we do, but we are plug and charge people. Like, we do not charge enough, nor do we use the same network enough, if that makes sense, to do a membership. It just we bounce all the time, and we go, we'll go up, and the chargers are different than when we come back, and we bounce around too much, and we just don't road trip enough that we feel like we need to do any memberships, So we just kind of
my wife's with you, Jace. She absolutely loves plug and charge. To be able to walk up to an EA, plug it in, and it just works. That's actually easier than gasoline. You don't have all the, do you want a car wash? Are you a member? Put in your zip code, put in all this stuff. She told me the day,
plug it in.
Charges. For me, I only have all the traveling I do. I only have 2 memberships, EA and Tesla. And that's it. I don't mess with the rest of them because I don't use them enough for it to matter. I keep those memberships going in the times when I know I'm going to be running. Like, I'm just going to keep it going through California, clear into September when we're going. But past September, I will turn it off. Because I'm not going to run that much through the winter times. And if I do, and I know I'm going to use it 3 or 4 times on a trip, then I'll turn it back on for that month and then turn it back off. And so that's kind of nice. Kind of like, I think if Ford was smart, we would do with Blue Cruise. They're doing it a little bit, but $50, isn't it $50?
It's $50 monthly. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it. I think it probably is.
I think it depends on where you live and what your daily commute looks like and how many roads are Blue Cruise zones by you.
And me at home, no way. But that trip to California or your trip up to Dearborn is probably all Blue Cruise, isn't it?
It's 99%. So that's, when like for us to go up to Northern Michigan too, it's 94%. So, and that's a 365-mile drive. So, when you get that, and we do that trip, now that my parents are back up there, we'll do it once every other month, essentially. That's huge, and I wish Ford would do, to be completely honest with Blue Cruise, I've delivered this feedback to them. I said, I don't really mind it at $50 a month. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think anybody should buy it that way anyway, to be honest with you, though. In my opinion, when you buy a 2024 or 25, you should lump it in with the loan. That is the best way to do it. I wouldn't do it any other way. Unless like it already came with the 1 year, like Chris, maybe just do it and then see if maybe they lower the price. That would be
what I'm hoping. I'm hoping a year from now they'll
that would be the only other way I would do it. But what I'm hoping from Ford, to be honest with you, is give us a second car discount. We've got 2 Ford EVs, and you want us to pay $50 a month for both?
Or let it have one membership and plug it to either one or something along those lines.
Yeah, there should be a family discount.
I'm actually looking at doing Comma for the full because here's the thing. I don't have any Blue Cruise roads within an hour of me. I have to drive an hour to get to one. And so for me, I'm doing that thing that nobody wants to talk about all the time. And that's not good. But with Comma, I could have blue lanes free type roads. And I think with Comma, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, it's hands-free.
Yeah, it's hands-free.
So but then you got to trust an aftermarket technology, and I don't know enough about it. That is the reason. So my boss at work runs about 180 miles twice a week. He commutes, and I've really tried to sell him a Lightning, like really tried to. And he's an EV fan. He's had a Bolt, he's had a Mach-E, and he really wants to buy a Silverado. And he's wanting to buy the Silverado right now for one major reason. It has Super Cruise, and Super Cruise is almost everywhere. All of his commute is Super Cruise roads. None of it is Blue Cruise. So we had the conversation today. I want to be able to run Super Cruise on the way to work. I said, well, in my Lightning, we'll put Comma on it. Well, I got to have a full replacement front bumper. Can I get that? And I was like, they don't make one, and that's he's got a few corner conditions that lead him to, because for him.
And then Super Cruise won't give you lane centering. So like Ford does with lines. So we had this conversation with somebody else that was one of Justin's coworkers that was also looking to buy, either a Power Boost or, a Silverado, same thing. And he's like, well, I like Super Cruise, but I also like Blue Cruise. But then does, Super Cruise and GM offer lane centering? Nope. On roads with lines? Nope. So there's all those caveats. It's sort of like public charging apps, right? Like, or should I say EV routing apps? There's no perfect solution for like everyone. It doesn't exist.
I will say that Model Y 13 FSD is really good. Really good. It's the Cybertruck had some little quirks. I've posted some videos about some of the weird stuff that it's done to me, and it doesn't it doesn't go from parking spot to parking spot. It can't park itself, and it when it leaves, you have to give it a little nudge for some reason. There's some and interesting. Cybertruck is not going to get autopilot. But they've I don't want to say given up forever, but it looks like they're putting no more effort, at least in the short term, at getting autopilot into. You're right, Kurt. He did. Kyle did just do one.
So is that? But in typical GM fashion, right? That it's Super Cruise for only the Cadillac, and the newer ones,
highest spec. Yeah,
and they did that weird thing with OnStar too. So like, if you own a 2024 and older, you have to pay $14 a month just to keep remote app access. If you have a 25, they now include that for free. You don't have to pay OnStar. So it's just like all these crazy things.
Speaking of that per month, when you look, you have to pay for something to mobile hotspot that to the truck. Either you have to pay GM to have a hotspot so the maps will work, or you have to use your phone and connect it each time. Whereas the Ford with Android Auto, you don't have to. And I'm still all in on my Lightning. I hate to say that because I'm trying to be objective of all the stuff that's out there. I want to like the Silverado with its range. I want to like the Cybertruck with its coolness, like it or not. But I still come back to the same truck. I still come back.
And we had an entire episode on it. That's why others, I swear, are doing the same thing. When it all said and done, they come back because, in my opinion, one of the biggest reasons is because of the F-150 platform in general and just what Ford has built with the F-150.
Yeah,
it is a phenomenal product.
Independent rear suspension, and now you've got some decent, let's call it above average technology. It's not Tesla level, but it's above average.
Sure. Yeah.
As a
tow for what everybody else wants to, for what the average buyer wants.
And we're seeing all the feedback, like, right, Cybertruck's not going to have lane centering, not going to have autopilot. GM only does it for certain levels, doesn't have it for others. You got to pay this, you got to pay that. I constantly see people who rent cars, and the rental car companies don't pay for the data, so they don't have mapping, they don't have any of this stuff. Overall value, I think it still stands well on its own, and it's I'm really interested in what those 2020 27, 28 models look like. I don't know the right word. I'm making this up. That's the right word. I'm making this up. I am making this up in my want to have fanboy imagination that I think Ford is going to go and do something with Tesla again on level 4, because they reiterated in the call that they just had that they feel really good with what they've got to level 3. And that they reiterated they are doing a partnership for level 4. And he said, I'm leaving it at that. He wouldn't elaborate.
I believe was the exact terminology. I'm not convinced it's Tesla. Who else have level 4?
I'm curious.
Waymo, there's a few, and they have Latitude AI, so they could technically like spin off Argo again, which was already Latitude AI, but they could probably spin again. I'm not convinced it's Tesla, but I'm also not convinced it's not Tesla. I don't really know. I think the problem with Tesla,
go ahead.
Is the problem with Tesla is the liability issue, in my opinion. Somebody said this the other day. Well, Ford partnered with Tesla on NACS. Okay, but charging and the liability for autonomy and autonomous driving is very, very different when it comes to legalities. Ford is very cautious when it comes to legal. I mean, like one of the most cautious. I can't explain to you how cautious Ford is when it comes to certain things.
Or not Blue Cruise while towing cautious.
Yeah, well, Blue Cruise 1.0 and half of the vehicles out there still cautious, right? Like I am of two minds there, because I just when you think about the people that are level 4, there's some really good stuff in China, but with all the tariff stuff and all of the instability, it's hard to imagine them putting
national
their
security,
national security. It's hard to imagine them putting their eggs in any of the Chinese baskets. Waymo, unless they do something dramatically better with all the crazy crap they've got all over their cars, Ford's not going to want to put that stuff on their cars.
But do you think Toyota would have signed that deal with them if they didn't have a future vision? I don't think Toyota signed up for what Waymo is currently.
Yeah, no, that's
with Toyota, they're smart, man. I mean, I know we said a lot of crap and spewed a lot of crap about Toyota. I'm not a Toyota guy.
No,
but
neither.
I know a lot of people that are, and friends of mine that still are, and they make some smart decisions.
I think
they don't have an EV
instantly
truck. That's a smart
they-
decision right now. I hate to say it.
They instantly jump near the top the moment they come out with a compelling offering, which they can do the moment they decide to. And they obviously read the
and
tea
look
leaves
at the billions that Ford has burned. Billions. Look at
Yep.
GM. Billions that they have burned. That Toyota's just saying, you know what? We're just waiting it out.
Yeah, my bad, Toyota. I talked a lot of crap about you passionately, and I was clearly
I mean, the
wrong.
RAV4, and there's two cars. The RAV4, I think, is one of the best-selling cars in America, besides the F-150.
It's number 3 on your list that you just showed under
Yeah, it
the
was number 3
Corolla.
that last year. Yeah, I mean, so it's the CRV, Honda CRV. I think is the other one. I mean, those cars sell better than anything else, and it's proof in the pudding because they're reliable, and they're a conservative company. But Honda and Toyota are notorious for building you a car that could do 300 horse and making it output 150. So you change the spark plugs every 10 years. And then you got Hyundai and Kia over here doing one that'll do 300 horse. We're going to push 400 horsepower to the wheels, and it's awesome. And it does have a lot of bells and whistles, and it's done at 100,000 miles. And they're not all that way, but
maybe even 30 at some of those Hyundai's, Kias. They don't.
Yeah,
they go kaboom.
And they're cheap. I mean, you can go buy an Ioniq 5 or an EV9 or any of those. They're really actually pretty good cars up front. I don't know about long-term and EV on those companies.
What do you guys think about the Kurt comment here? Because I'll there was a moment. It was a brief moment. There was a moment where I thought to myself, I could take the buyback and go buy a Model Y with FSD and never have to drive again. Like, it can drive me all over the place. I can just change the paradigm. I can just look at driving differently. And it came down to exactly what Kurt says, which is it's what I miss most now in my gas truck. Like with the gas truck that I have no desire to go out right now and hop in that truck and take it anywhere. And my Lightning, give me any excuse to drive that thing. And I just want to go drive it with no particular agenda or destination in mind. I just love the drive that much. Kurt's talking about that he really enjoys driving the truck.
Very telling that most Tesla buyers do not buy FSD.
But but it's expensive. It's like $8,000 and it was 15 before that. So as it becomes more common, more commoditized,
it stresses me out.
But will this be like manual transmissions? Because when I was young, I had a Mitsubishi Starion that was a manual transmission. I had a Camaro. I showed Martin my 35th anniversary Camaro, which was an awesome manual transmission. I would probably at this point, I would not go out and buy another manual transmission. I'm just not that guy anymore. Will FSD become the automatic transmission in 10 years and the rarity will be the person that drives?
Well, I think everybody has their own systems though, right? So it's a little bit different than just a physical, because you have Ford who's doing it, both. I mean, they're offering, not quite at the level of FSD, obviously, but they're offering a solution, a hands-free solution for a long drive. Hands-free, honestly, actually before Tesla, which is surprising.
Long drive. I think, Jace, you nailed it right there. The long drive. I am going to really enjoy Blue Cruise all the way to California. But I will tell you, when I was running Blue Cruise through to New Orleans, and we ran it almost the whole way, when I get into busy areas in towns, it struggles. And I'm on 1.4 or 3. I think 4. I think it's one I got the other day. It doesn't hold corners real well. It freaks out in road construction. It stressed me out. I turned it off when I was in a city. I'm not going to sit there in a place that I don't know where I'm going. I'm trying to pay attention to the navigation. And then I got to worry about Blue Cruise kicking on or off, not if I can hold the wheel or not. And there's semis beside me. And yes, it moves over. Ford's come light years away from 1.0. It's way better, but it's still not good enough for me to want to trust it fully. And so it's just another thing that I won't probably pay for it most of the time.
Yeah. And I don't really want to be responsible for I'm not one of those people that's going to put my trust in software that is controlling a 7,000-pound truck. Do you know there's a difference in that than putting beta software on my phone? And that's how I've always viewed, and I've been very vocal about this. I do not I think, along myself and other companies, I think Tesla's approach is not particularly the one that big three legal departments are going to want to follow. I just don't see that. I could be wrong in that,
Well,
but it goes against. But it goes against everything
that envelope. They're pushing that envelope, and Ford's Blue Cruise and Chevy's Super Cruise is because they're trying to head that direction, but it's conservative, right? It's very
But their
slow.
driver monitoring is light years ahead of what Tesla offers with camera only. You know, I mean, they're watching your eyes. They're literally watching your pupils. It's you know, they're using camera as well as infrared. So I think they have you know, sort of convinced themselves, you know, that it's better, or you know, that the liability is not on them. So I don't know. I don't see Ford partnering like that with FSD. I think there were issues with the NACS rollout and agreement, Elon firing the entire team. I don't think Jim Farley and Ford looks kindly upon that. I don't want to speak for them, but that's just my guess.
And it worked very quickly.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm curious on the, you know, Tesla's an interesting thing because they've got these new sensors now that can detect your heart rate and all kinds of things with there's some radar sensors or something they've got in the new vehicles. But at the same time, for all their tech, like, to me, the moment I'm really curious what's going to happen with the robo-taxi and stuff. And there's a lot of stuff is going to be exposed early with that because there's going to be some problems. I'm curious how all that works out.
Remember, Boring Company was the next big thing, right? And the Las Vegas Tunnel was going to be this, you know,
Las Vegas Tunnel isn't even automated. Like, real people are behind those wheels. They can't automate, you know, but I think what Jerry Rig everything had an episode, or hey, it wasn't even an episode. It was a back and forth, I think, on one of the social medias. Now that I think of it, it wasn't even a video. Zach was talking about, you know, who's got liability. It's exactly what you were saying, Jace. Like, to me, if you're telling me that it's full self-driving, unsupervised, which is not where we are today. Today we are supervised. Right. But when you start talking about full self-driving, unsupervised, which is what robotaxi is supposed to be, and if I get in a robotaxi, I'm assuming that I'm not responsible for what that robotaxi does. Tesla is. So when that becomes what everybody's consumer vehicle is capable of, which is part of what he's promised. But again, he's promised a lot of things, but he's saying that you can rent out, you can, you know, go to work, let your vehicle work for you as a robotaxi and come back. Tesla, maybe it's even with Tesla insurance, right? If you want to caveat that, we'll cover it if it's under Tesla insurance. Yeah. But to me, if your software is driving the vehicle, your software should be responsible for it, or it's not safe enough to be on the road in an unsupervised way. Now, that's just my opinion. That seems to be what Zach's opinion is. I don't think it's unreasonable.
I agree with you, Chris.
I'm not driving that vehicle, but Tesla is.
I love the idea that we're going to be unsupervised at some point for certain instances. But for me, you know, I walk out on a Saturday morning and I have a Lightning, a Mach-E, which is, I'm blessed to be able to have those. And then I have a 78 Ford 3/4 ton pickup sitting there with an old 460. And about once a month, I just think, I want to hear those glass packs rattle. I still got that in me. So I go get in that old truck and I drive it to get donuts and a Monster in the morning. And it's like, there's something about it. And I love my Lightning. Like Chris, you were saying, you don't have any desire to get in that Dodge and go out. But if I had, you know, a Shelby Cobra or a Mustang, something that gives you that visceral experience, I think we're missing some of that. I am curious over the next 5 years, what the next generation that's coming up as we age further, Jace, as you get into your 40s and I get into my 50s and these younger drivers come on, what are they going to want? My daughter is done with Tesla. She wants out of that Model 3 so bad she can't stand it right now. And it's not that it's a bad car. She's tired of charging. We bought her a Mustang, just a good old, you know, 2-door. It's an EcoBoost, and she's excited about it. Now she's like, you mean I have to hit the brakes again? I was like, yeah, you're used to a Tesla. Yeah. and you know, the regen, but she'll get used to that. But there are some of that with this newer generation. We're going to see how that goes. I think the market, like you said earlier, that suggestive, would you call it, Chris, the for social acceptance? If people want FSD and that's what we're driving for, it'll happen. If they don't, they don't. And I think that was kind of the point of tonight's episode. Why aren't drivers making the switch to EV? Do they really want it? Do they want to go get in there? There's a lot of guys that just want to roll coal in their diesel. They just want that country song feel in the Midwest where I'm going to roll coal and I'm going to go down a gravel road, just the whole thing. And that's why they don't drive an EV, for those reasons.
I think before we go, we need to talk about one other piece. And I think that we've sort of skipped over. And I think that's the dealerships. I think education has to improve at dealerships, but we have to have salesmen who want to sell EVs. They have to want to sell first they have to want to sell cars, which I'm telling you is not
money. They don't want to sell cars.
Yeah, well, that too. But there are some that want to sell cars. At least that's the way it used to be. But yes, I agree. You have to have some knowledge about vehicles and to be able to shepherd somebody in, because it's crazy, but there are people who walk into a dealership and go, I'm here to buy a car. I have genuinely no freaking clue what car I want. It sounds crazy, but it happens. More than you would think. I worked at a dealer. It's crazy that they'll walk in and what do you offer? What's the latest? You still make the Fusion? No. It's crazy. So that's one piece. But the other piece of it, specifically when it comes to EVs and Lightning, and you struggled with this, Chris. I struggled with this, Chris. It's hard to find a perfect Lariat in an ICE vehicle, let alone a Lightning. You add a whole nother ball game on top of it to try to find the truck that you're looking for, and then you're trying to add 9.6 onto it too. That adds another whole thing onto it. It's too hard to find a Lightning in general. It is just too hard to find one nowadays.
They know what Lightning is, but when you ask them about a 9.6, they're like, a what? And this is the dealers talking.
And it's not listed well. It's not listed well on the window sticker. Yeah. And it breaks my heart every time I see somebody in our Facebook forum group, right, where somebody posts that they didn't know it didn't have the 240. Like, it breaks my heart.
And there's reasons for that, because it's the standard is the 2.4, so they don't list it out because it's a standard equipment, and really they're just like out of room on their Monronis. If you want to know the truth, I think they're just like throwing too much on there. But yeah, I mean, it's too hard to find the truck that you want when it comes to, because popular trims, because everybody wants that. But then you add EV and Lightning on top of it, it's even harder to find the truck that people want. And like you said, there's a bunch of caveats with Pro Power and Max Tow and all this stuff. And, it's too hard to find a vehicle when I can go to a dealer and there's 27 F-150s sitting there, ICE, and there's maybe one Lightning, maybe not any at all, which is what I'm seeing here.
Dude, I
there's dealers don't even have any.
Just for perspective, I mean, I'm literally going to Tennessee. So I looked at my dealer that I bought my truck from. It has 2 Pros and a Flash. That's all that's on the lot. I went to the dealer where I did my Flash video early on up in Colma. They don't have any. None of them had used. Like, none of them. And then the ones that I did find in like what they call the Ford store, Morgan Hill, and those kind of things around here, no discounts, no pricing. Jace, you were sending me leads. Martin, you were sending me leads. And they were all out of state. Up in Washington, they have special incentives. And when I would call, I'd see a price that was enticing, but that was only if you were in Washington. Jace, you found me some in Virginia, which actually sparked. Virginia won't even sell them to California because the DMV here is so difficult to work with. They straight out were like, sorry, man, like we don't sell to California. I'm like, because you can't? No, we just won't. Because it takes so much paperwork effort. It is. And then that's where I got the idea to search.
So how was your experience at that dealer? Did they know? Like, were they knowledgeable?
In Virginia?
Or did you already know what you wanted?
Virginia was knowledgeable. Virginia sells a bunch of them. Like, they had a bunch. Yeah,
you can tell. They had 10, I think.
Yeah, they had
just 24 platinums. They had way more than that. That was just 24 platinums.
Now the Keller Ford that's in the middle of Central California farmland, they're not selling any Lightnings.
We have those here. The Lewisburg Ford, about 2 hours north of here, which is an EV dealer. They had Mach-E's and 3 Lightnings a year ago. I was there charging the other day, and there's nothing. And there's 2 chargers and all this stuff. And I'm like, where's all the EV stuff at? I think it's either sold or it's not being pushed. But Jace, I think you were alluding to something a minute ago that I think you hit on. The dealerships need to be knowledgeable on an EV, and they need to want to sell one. So I think a lot of those guys that are at the dealers selling are the same people as consumers. They are the consumer. So if they're not convinced as a consumer to drive electric, why the hell are they going to push one unless their boss is telling them specifically to push one?
Yep. That's exactly why I wouldn't. I mean, I sell Lightnings to people because I love it, because I am passionate about it, and I know when I have dealt with car salesmen in the past or, whatever, they are going to sell the product that they like the most. That's just, they're going to do the best job at selling it. Let's put it that way, right? Like, they're going to do the best job at what they know best. And 90% of dealers, unfortunately, that's probably just that's not an EV.
Say that because my very first experience ever with a Lightning was a 22 Rapid Red extended range. I pull in my Super Duty, the King Ranch Super Duty 19 model. And the guy walks up to me, and I knew a lot about him at that point, more so than most people. They didn't even know that there was, I don't know for how long, 6 months. That thing's electric. I didn't even know they made one of those. You hear that? I walk up, and the first thing out of his mouth is, yeah, a little bit. He says, "Are you wanting to tow? Because this thing won't tow." I lost all the credibility for that guy right there. And honestly, he was saying that based on one person's experience where it didn't go very far, or it had a problem and it went into limp mode. He's just generalizing that in every sense of the word of Lightnings can't tow. And I looked at him and I said, "That's bullshit. Yes, they can. I know they can very, very well, better than this diesel." And I hadn't even driven one yet. I just knew people who had towed, like Sergio was early and he was towing all the way across the country. And yes, there's range limitations, but, and so that type of mentality at these dealerships that they just want to turn trucks and turn money is why the F-150 is still being pushed, because you don't have to convince people. You don't have to work. You don't have to spend 2 hours with somebody convincing them that electric's better for whatever reason. Honestly, I think that's why the Facebook group that we have, there's a few of them we're members of most of them, the owners group and the 22 plus group. That's probably the best source right now for you to get information. And it is hard. There are people who are kind of rude and people that just, that we hear the same questions over and over and over and over.
People that just spew random information that's incorrect.
Like you have
like that the batteries imported. Somebody said the other day.
Yeah. I mean,
F-150 Lightning batteries imported. I'm like, no, it's not.
They don't read the pinned post. Like, I think you're going to join the F-150 Lightning owners group right now. You need to have to take a little tiny test and let it walk you through a few things that are basic. Like, oh, I have to have a home charger. And oh, did you know the 23s and 24s only have 48 amp charging? Like, you guys, Chris, you're going to be fine with your chargers, but
no EV gets 300 miles of range.
No, but you
in 20 degrees.
One of your guys' platinum trucks, because I come last night at midnight with 24%. I needed my truck at 80 this morning or 100 this morning, and it was with my 80 amp charger. I can't do it the other way, but they don't tell you that. Like, most people didn't even know that they pulled the 80 amp charging back out in 24. So that's the knowledge base that we're losing. So yeah, great, Jason. I'm glad you brought this up, because the dealer knowledge really, it's tough, because they're there to make money and they can't spend all their time trying to convince somebody to lose a sale when they could have sold 3 F-150s in the same time. So that is probably a big reason. I think that's the same thing with probably with Tesla. I don't know if Tesla guys are trying to push the Cybertruck, or if it's just because it's a Cybertruck, people don't want it. I know that with Rivian, it's a whole different experience. I know some people who have Rivian, and that's a whole different experience.
I think too, you have to remember that, like, they're there to make money, obviously, the salesman, but they're also there to, like, do their job as easily as possible and make the same amount of money, right? So it's just natural. That's like human nature, right? Why work harder, work smarter? So you're going to sell the vehicle that you can sell the quickest and the easiest and the least amount of questions. You're going to just be like, oh, I don't know if it gets range. What's that? I don't know. But this thing, this says 500 miles range. And, and you go to the gas stations like you have forever, and I'll never hear from you again. Tax credit, what's that? Right. I mean, you can see why.
And that same mentality of the salesman is the same mentality people have when they're buying a truck. They're like, oh, I don't know. I just want easy. I just want the truck to put gas in it and you just drive it. And
I get it. We're all in parts of our lives, right? Like some people, like I've been in parts of my life where I'm like, I don't want anything new. This was like me a month ago or a couple weeks ago. Like I'm like, I just want peace. I leave me alone. That's all I want. Like I don't even care if I have a car anymore. But I just feel like a lot of people are busy and they just don't have time to really delve into what EV is, and even if it is the best thing for their use case, they just don't take the time, and you can't blame them. I mean, society is crazy nowadays, but that's why I think what we do and what we need to try to do is, and I think, to be honest with you, what Ford does a really, really good job of is advocating for EVs, but also showcasing them to the public and having events and having people out. And I think in general, the Ford EV community has been really great about this, that getting out there with the Lightning Club and, the Mach-E Girls Club and all these clubs that I can think of that I don't see any other manufacturer other than maybe Tesla and Rivian have.
And
and it's
like, go drive those at those events, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And at car shows and
right. I'd like to see some more extended drives. I know Cybertruck, probably because they're not selling, has been starting to do where you can go drive one. Chris, you had one for like
I went for 3 days.
See, that's the thing. There's not enough Lightning inventory to do that.
Yeah.
Right. But when there is, they might do something like that.
And we saw it with California Mach-E's. There were a few dealers with Mach-E's that had I saw at one point, like before they cut the prices, like 40 some of them, And then Ford said, you can deal on the EVs, go ahead. And we just saw the Mach-E's just go.
Brandon Flash mentioned this on a post that I fully agree with. And Ford has a hard time. They can't mandate anything in the dealer network.
Right.
But he mentioned that if you sell EVs, you should have EVs as loaners. And I think as many times as I've been in a loaner, unfortunately, it's a huge miss. I've been trying to get my wife to drive EVs. And more than just my truck, because she's never going to own Lightning. That's not going to be what she wants. What a missed opportunity to take and say, hey, my Lightning is in the shop. Here's a Mach-E. Maybe you can't have a bunch of 70,000 Lightning, loaners, but the $35,000 Mach-E, you should have a couple Mach-E's on there. And I take it home and my wife drives a Mach-E, and suddenly, hey, you know what? I could see myself in a Mach-E.
I did that. That happened to us.
Opportunity.
That's exactly what happened to us. We went down to do the recalls on the Lightning, and I said, "Hey, I'm electric fan. I'm not. You're going to put me in a gas." And he said, "Well, I've got a Mach-E sitting here," and the guy had no idea what it was. It was a GT Performance Edition, $70,000 sticker car. I drove it home.
GT is nice.
I let my wife drive it, and she's like, "I could do this. This is fun." And then we, the whole, you do that for a while. The whole. Like Kurt's mentioned, and he spent, I don't know how many times I've had that conversation, Kurt. I totally get you, man, where you sit in the parking lot somewhere talking to somebody who to this day still doesn't know about it.
But that's what I was telling you. I still have people say at the grocery store, I didn't know they make electric trucks.
Yep. It still happens.
All right.
Now, everybody knows the Cybertruck's electric because it's the damn Cybertruck.
I'm not sure everybody does.
I don't know.
I think there are people out there that don't even realize Tesla is an electric car.
No, that's probably very fair. First they didn't, for sure.
It's rare, but I think it exists. It's fascinating.
I'll also say with Kurt, when Kurt talked about like towing, he said he's going to be towing a horse trailer. I think, like when I think of the three of you guys, for example, right? Like, Jace is towing a boat. Martin's towing freaking everything short of a nuclear reactor around the country. Kurt is towing horses. I think of you guys as like people that play rec basketball, right? You guys are out there doing it, right? But for 70% of the people that wear Air Jordans, they're not playing basketball, but it's the number one selling shoe, right? And it's socially accepted. It's this amazing product that everybody wears. And I wear Nikes, and I haven't played basketball since junior high. And it's and so I think electric needs to get there. Electric needs to get where, yes, there are those legitimate cases where people need the $180, $200 premier Nikes because they're ballers on the weekends, and they play and they tow the boat, they tow the horse trailer, they're towing other vehicles all over the place, they're towing battery packs. But for 80% of the people, they're like me, they're never towing. We're just wearing the shoes, and I'm not buying the $200 Air Jordans. I'm wearing the Nike Air Monarchs for $69.99 at JCPenney or Kohl's that were on sale with a coupon. And so we need the affordable Air Monarchs of EVs that have that same kind of cool tech and branding, but it's not the premier. I don't need, right? That's what we need. And it needs to be socially acceptable. It needs to be.
But there's a lot of throwbacks too, though. I think there's some people driving an F-150 and not a Lightning because they still want to have the rear-wheel drive V8 sound, and yes, it's an automatic.
It's not even a V8 though, is it? It's not even a V8.
Well, some of them. I mean, you can buy a 5-liter V8.
You can still buy a V8. Yeah,
you can still buy a V8, and I think those things. That guy might have a '69 Camaro or a '69 Mustang in his garage. Hell, you were talking about basketball. I went out and found that Reebok makes the pump still. That's what I bought for my damn basketball rec league. Yeah, because it was cool. They're worthless. They're not worth anything. But I was like, so that's that throwback feeling when you get into F-150 and you start it and it goes rum, and it's got that same feeling of I push that ball on my deal or I start that truck, and that is hard to outsell until you drive a Lightning. To me. You got to drive one. Like I really feel like you got to drive one. But again, we're circling back around to, like for Kevin, he's been in it. He's been in my truck a lot. I've raced people in it with him. We've towed boats in it all across the nation, and it's just not quite. I can't get the guy off center, and I understand why. It's a use case thing. So anyhow, that's a lot. We covered a lot of topics.
It was.
Yeah. So
it was good.
Well, we've been going I think it says 2 hours and 7 minutes. So, anything else that anybody wants to cover that we hadn't heard?
I just wanted to show this off really quickly before we go. I've got this cool 3D printed thing. So, I had the one before, Chris. You probably saw it on Twitter. I don't know if you've probably seen it on the groups, Martin, where the coin slot holder was if you don't have the trailer brake controller. I had that one before, and unfortunately, RIP, that is no longer with us anymore, that truck. So now I have Platy, which obviously has the, all the towing stuff. So I do not have the coin slot holder. So this little guy, it will go where the French fry holder is what I call it is, where the shifter folds down. It's essentially... Yeah, and it's essentially the same way of wiring that the old one did that was on the coin slot holder. It's just a little shorter. You go just through that little trim piece. I find it interesting
that you're looking for a place to put your phone, because to me, I of all the Lightnings I've owned, that center slot, that's where it lives. I don't look at it. If I can't get it on the big screen, I don't want it.
Charging for me. I don't like cords. I don't want a cord anymore. Like, I don't want a freaking cord. And so that cord is always dangling out of the stupid center console.
You have a Platinum that has a wireless charger in it.
Oh, that thing doesn't work. Those wireless
chargers are terrible. So are you saying that this one you have works? Because I've never had a wireless charger.
Oh yeah, this is Apple MagSafe.
Yeah.
Does it?
This will charge at
15,
60 watts,
20 watts, something 30 now. Oh yeah, this is the new MagSafe. It will go fast.
Even my phone, I'm sitting here charging it right now off of this little desktop thing. It's already at 100% in the truck. Plug into the truck's cord. I'm lucky if it'll maintain it while it's running Android Auto.
Oh, like if I'm plugging in, I can do well.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's something because I'm plugging into the USB slot
in the
center console. Well, no, you give it power, it'll charge. Like it's saying I got another 10 minutes to 100%, and I was dead when I walked in here. But the charger in the truck, I have it plugged in the center console through that little slot, under the deal.
Yeah.
And when I'm running Android Auto and I'm running down the road, man, it barely maintains.
Wow, I'm surprised.
I don't want my phone to get hot, and that's what, like Kurt says, the wireless ones get really hot, and they do. I just throw it in the center slot and plug in the back. I know. Jason,
use this. Check this out, because it's real MagSafe. It's a true Apple MagSafe. So I guess you can't do that because you have Android. But
we have MagSafe for Android.
Yeah, they got something probably legit, like original. So He actually printed me one, the original one he gave me that went in this coin slot holder. This is Dad Janeered for everybody out there. This guy's awesome. He's been so good to me. He sent me like 3 different versions. It was awesome because like there's a different.
You want one?
Yeah, there was a different size. So like the old MagSafe without the braided cord was a little bit different size than the MagSafe with the braided cord, and he sent me a new one. And for the one that he originally sent had the charger built in, and it only charged at like 2 watts. There was something wrong with it; it didn't work. So I kind of messaged him and said, "Hey, by chance have you made like just give me the 3D thing, and I'll supply the MagSafe charger." He's like, "Yes, actually, I've been prototyping it." So he sent me a prototype, and then 2 days later, I wrecked the truck. So we move on. And so now the new truck doesn't have that. So I was like looking up ways. I really liked the way it looked and the way it, but obviously I have that trailer stuff there now, so I couldn't do it. So he sent me this and I'm excited. It'll be fun. I want somewhere to wirelessly like boop, pop my phone and just like have it there. And so this one, I think it'll work.
I've been playing around with some of that stuff myself, and I know this is going to be really difficult, but I don't know if you can see over here in the background, 3D printer. I mean, I do a lot of that. I don't try to do much for other people because I'm going to get overwhelmed with guys wanting to be able to ask me to do stuff. But like I actually did all the clips for the under the hood, for the stupid plastic ones that break.
Those things break all the time.
Yeah,
I think this is cheesy as hell, but I really kind of want to put some of the blue tow hook covers on. I just can't get the damn frame right. I think just some blue flare. I really have been thinking about painting the calipers blue, at least maybe putting some blue letters on, just something to first.
Yeah, at least with the platinum wheels, you can't see the calipers, but at least with the Lariat ones, you can
kind of see them. Yeah.
Did you see what I sent, Chris? I put the stickers on the platinum wheels.
I don't know what it's. That's my only thing about the platinum that I'm not a fan of is those big, shiny, gaudy 22.
You'll be able to find wheels.
I'll trade you. I have a set. You can.
You got to change the TPMS out, but
that's fine. I got a fire machine. So see this right here? These set of wheels, they're perfect. I'll trade you.
There you go.
How old are your tires, Martin? What have you been doing with your tires, though?
Tires on it for you. That's fine. It doesn't matter. They're $550 for a brand new set of Aturos.
Because it's 22 inches. Does that mean the sidewall is shorter and it's going to be a rougher ride? Also, that's the other thing I was wondering about.
Well, I mean,
that's what I had always heard, but I'm telling you, Justin's truck still has the platy wheels on it. Yeah, it rides. First of all, it's way quieter because I have Duratrax on there, so you have to remember that. So mine's loud as hell right now. But I would say ride quality is exactly the same, to be completely honest with you. Yeah, I don't notice a difference. And actually maybe just even a little bit better just because they're a highway, tire instead of a Kevlar all-terrain, rugged terrain. Yeah.
The 22-inch wheels and tires way more, which is going to hurt efficiency. That's why they rated at 300 versus 320. But
yeah.
And you got the leather, massaging, all that adds weight. I mean,
and then I was looking at the blackout package. Do they just is it the same patty wheels, but they're just powder coated black? Is that what those?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, so it's not a different wheel.
And that can happen. There's powder coat shops, $300-400, $500. You can get your wheels.
Yeah, I was gonna say you could do that too. Yeah,
it's easy, and it doesn't mess with the warranty.
Well, you got a black truck, so I don't know if I'd powder. That'd be a lot of black.
I like black though. I like it all. I like it all blacked out. We'll see.
Yeah, you got some decisions to make.
Yeah,
it's gonna be fun. Well, wait, what next week? Maybe we'll get to see some pictures, or is it not that fast?
Well, I got to figure out. So I sign all the paperwork tomorrow, and I get the check tomorrow. But then the bank's got to actually, it takes a minute for the bank to actually process that amount of money. It doesn't just appear like a 20, like another check would. So, and then once that's done, I got to get a cashier's check. Got to get to the dealer, and then I got to look at flights. I'm going to take whatever day the cheapest flight is.
They're holding the truck for you?
They're holding the truck for me. Yeah.
Nice.
And this dealer, this is an interesting dealer. I'm interested to come and see this dealer. They have 8 DC fast chargers at this dealer.
Nice.
And they have a weird kind of ebb and flow about them. They stock, they're kind of like the Virginia one where they'll stock like 10 Lightnings. So they've got a bunch of Lightnings there. And it was interesting because I had my pick of a bunch of different ones. I was looking at different stickers and I don't understand this one. I'm not a fan of white trucks, I guess. I think of white trucks as just like a work spec. Like that's the base. But there's a color of white that Ford charges like $800 or $900 more for Star White.
Yeah, Star White tricolor,
and it is gorgeous in the sun.
Is it gorgeous?
It's pearl.
Okay,
it's a tri-coat, I believe.
So it's a
nice-
better quality of paint.
I
Is
had to
that
paint it. Trust me, guys. I've spent so much time painting that truck. But that picture that I showed you earlier with those two, the front truck is Star White. The
Star
rear one's
White.
Oxford
They
white.
both
They've
look
had
white
since
to me.
91. They are.
I'm sure in
certain
person they
lights.
look different. Yeah,
You get it in the right light. It's like any matter blue. Any matter blue.
You got it in the right
absolutely
light.
a black truck in the right
Yeah.
and most light. But then you get it in the right sunlight and it just pops.
Yeah.
The red is a $500 color too, because it's a tinted clear coat.
Red is the highest. Actually, not when you're repainting. I've done a bunch of that rapid red. It's not tinted in the clear coat when you're repainting. Ford does in theirs, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
So anyway, with that said, red is the highest color there is to paint. Now, with that said, we painted the Mach-E, and the Mach-E is a single stage grabber blue. It cost me about $700 for the base coat to paint the front end of that car. I about died. As I've never had one. Red is always the top color. Something with the pigments and how many different colors it takes to put into red is what it costs. But holy cow, but I like the grabber blue. I wish they paint the Lightning that color. I'd buy one.
I would like to see some more exciting colors. Yeah, I'm just not a fan of the white. There's like a weird kind of baby blue color that's out there. There's like a slate gray. So yeah, there was the red. But I feel like red gets too much attention. Like the cops can see red really quickly. So for me, it was either going to be it was either going to be antimatter blue or black, and then the black one had the bed liner already put in. And I'm a dork for marketing, and I like that it says Ford on the spray. It's stupid.
I'm jealous that mine doesn't, but.
And then it's got the power running boards that I don't even know that I care about. But
we like them. Nice. I thought we'd hate them. I've
had them.
They're a little noisy.
Noisy when they're going up and down.
They're not as bad as the amp. So I had them on two platinums, and then I put the amp running boards on a Ranger, and they're noisy. But that's a game changer, because here's the thing: when you get out of the truck and the boards are there, you find yourself not having to step all the way up. And the Lightning does a lot better job with the height of the running board compared to the F-150. The F-150 is too tight and too high. You can't get your foot on it, but the Lightning does a good job. So that's why I never changed them. But when my wife bought her 19 Ranger and she tried to get in it, she's like, this thing sucks. I can't even get in it. So we added that's power running board, and it goes down like 4 or 5 inches lower. And
they're wider. They're wider too, like by a good 2 to 3 inches. See, I thought ours are a little slippery. That was actually my only.
The Ford ones are. The amp ones have a bit of grip to them, but you can fix that, Jace. They're making
some grip tape, like like we did it on our stairs, actually, kitchen stairs, because
same kind of thing.
Stairs. So it would be easy. But I'm telling you, Chris, we really do like them. I thought we would not like them. Okay. I was like, we were like looking up, let's.
You guys know who doesn't like them? Is the people that live down muddy dirt gravel roads. That's the people who don't like them.
Do they get jammed with the
in them? Yeah. You got to clean them out all the time, and then they get the dirt in the joints. They'll get to squeaking and making noise. That's what happened to mine when I was driving down gravel. Now I'm kind of a pavement princess truck. We don't have any of that.
So. And there's a little button on them, Chris, that you hit with your foot. So like if you want them sitting down, like we go downtown, and I like running boards because it's a door ding blocker, for lower cars. It'll block. Down? Yeah, so you just walk up. You can do it in the settings, but you just walk up and you just touch your foot on this little switch that's out on the side of them.
Nobody knows about that, Jace. I have a guy that has a Power Boost. He's got 70,000 miles. Pulls up. He was having trouble, and I was like, that button? And he's like, what button? That bump on the board?
Yeah, it's hidden.
And it came out. He was like, wow, I didn't know it did that.
I love that you said that. I'm gonna have to look for that button because I like the look of the running boards being down, to be honest with you, and I like them sitting down.
See, I'm just the opposite. I want that thing out of the way when it's not being functional. But the nice thing is you got it both ways with the Ford on that. You can leave them down, you can leave them up, you can do whatever you want.
You can leave them down for like 5 minutes and then they go up, or like I think it's like 5, 10, 15. It's pretty always down. Yeah, and then on top of it, you have the control with the button on the outside. So
I'm more excited about it now. Choice. And Kurt, I went and splurged, and I got a platinum, and Thank you for Jace. Really, I wasn't even considering a platinum until Jace started sharing some examples, and then I got to work to deal a $70,000 platinum. So
I'm next. I'll
have
to go now because
you split right between Justin and I because I think my platy was like 63.
68. Oh, so you got a platy for 63?
68. I think it was 63 was
but you're
the final.
Lease and you got all the hookups and everything, Jace. You kind of got the best deal ever.
Yeah, and it was the perfect timing. I mean, I couldn't believe that timing before March 31st. I told Chris this the other day on the phone.
Yeah.
The moment that guy called me with the deal of
should have bought two.
I should have told him I'll take two. It was the dumbest thing. I called Justin. His first quote was like 10,500 miles with like, I don't know, 2 or 3 down. And it was like $530 a month.
And you got a bunch of other great stuff with it. You got like protection and some other.
Yeah, they threw it because it was the end of the month. Well, end of the quarter actually even. And they're like, we have these certificates of some kind. They're like, we'll throw in wear care for the entire, loan, and it'll actually decrease your loan amount by. They said $5. It ended up only being like $2 cheaper a month because they had our county wrong. But it was still cheaper, and we got a service, so it was like $749, and they were able to bring it down. So I will say this other dealer, the second dealer, has not been as awesome as the first dealer. Probably the worst one so far that we've worked with through a Ford EV purchase, but I'm still letting them figure their stuff out before I land base them. So
I did not negotiate a spare wiring harness, and I'm hoping I will not need one.
Oh no, God! Then a couple extra spare 12 volts.
I do still have my
even hiccups. We're gonna lose Chris as a Ford guy.
Oh no!
I do still have my spare 12-volt battery though. I took it out of my other Lightning. I absolutely took my spare 12.
How are you gonna ship
that on thing? What's that?
How are you gonna ship that on the airplane?
I'm not gonna take it to Tennessee, but it's that will. Yeah, no, it's in my garage, but that's part of why, I got my tonneau cover off of it. I got my bed extender off of it. I got my, if you can buy the Ford ESP warranty, I would buy it. If you're talking about my truck, I would, no, you will not, should not. Yeah, that's, that needs to never
he's saying
be touched.
If you can buy it for your new truck, you would get it. Yeah, I would think.
Yeah, once he's close to out of warranty or getting close. I would look at it.
Yeah. Also, I really want to see what 20, like we talked about earlier. I want to see what 27 and 28 bring, because here we are in 25, 26, 27, 28. That's 3 years away. I have the truck for 3 years. I'm not going to go over the 36,000 for sure. As we get closer, if it looks like I'm not seeing something exciting come out, then I'll almost certainly have to look at an ESP, just because that's how I am now.
Which stinks because you can't buy Floyd or Granger in Cali.
I know. No, it's
silly.
It's ridiculous.
And here I am. I'm this lone guy that's just on my own, no warranty ever.
If I lived within 100 miles of you, Martin, I would absolutely buy like a salvage title. I would go crazy. I would absolutely, because I know, but
I'd come to Martin tomorrow to fix my rattle door on my Platinum.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes 5 minutes, and you don't have to jack with the dealer, and yeah.
No, absolutely.
You want to know a funny story real quick before we go, though?
Yeah.
How important 12-volt batteries are. So I was on the side of the road, smashed into a wall, and I had just put that 12-volt battery in there yesterday, and I was like, Justin, we've got the tools. Let's do it. We start taking it out. We're on the side of the highway, and we're taking out the 12-volt that was brand new from a day ago, because I'm like, we are not giving up that 12-volt.
Did you already have your 10-millimeter socket?
You are the guy that when I buy these trucks from the salvage yard, everything's freaking missing. The keys, the floor mats, the jack, all that stuff's always gone out of these trucks when I get them.
Yeah, I'm taking everything that I can take. Before we gave our Justin's truck to Carvana, I'm like, okay, we're taking everything that we could take. We took the home link out of that thing, put it in Justin's Platinum. I'm not messing around.
Does the Platinum not have home link? Even the Platinum doesn't have it?
I'll send you a link for the part number.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to get that. I did.
It's
get
a 5-minute swap.
I did get the Jim Farley signed.
Good.
So I've got the Jim Farley signed one. I've got. Are they the exact
I will
same?
say the mirror is $250, so that kind of sucks. But
yeah. What are you gonna do? You know what else is missing from the Platinum is underneath the back row they don't have those fold down storage anymore.
It's an option, yes, but I hated that thing personally.
Did you really? Did you hate it? Why did you hate it?
Because we put the dog cage back there, and it made it uneven. So it's like 2 inches, in the dog cage. We'd have to take a towel to level out.
I bought one on eBay for $300, and you just have to. I can show you guys. They're already in the floor. The studs are already there, so you can just add that after if you want. It can be added, Chris, if you feel like that's a big deal. We'll talk about that.
Yeah,
just fold the seats down. Nobody can see underneath them. Anyway.
That's true. Yeah,
well,
I was just surprised some of the
little 12-inch subwoofers, so maybe we want that instead.
And a light up logo.
No light up logos. Oh my god. Oh,
all right.
I do love the light up logo, but I saw somebody. Yeah. Anyway, I won't get off on a tangent. It's been too long anyway. But I was a little surprised how many little nickel and dime things there was as I was looking at the different not the Larrys, but the Platinums. I thought it was fully loaded, and there are a bunch of stuff missing that used to be there.
Yeah.
So yeah,
not too much, really. I mean, what else did you?
Bed
well,
scales.
Just home link.
The bed scales are gone.
They're there.
They
should be. I don't think it's just listed. It's just not listed on the window sticker. Like 9.6 isn't listed because it's included.
Oh, yours had bed scales.
Pretty sure we have scales. I'll look. I'll double check.
Oh, yeah.
I'm almost positive. And then, people don't think massaging seats, but it is. It's called multi-contour instead of massaging seats.
Spare tire.
Really, I think. Yeah, that was optioned though, so you do have it, but that was eliminated technically.
Yeah. Then that's part of the reason I chose that one because that one had the spray-in bed liner and it had the spare tire already. Not that I wouldn't just said, "Hey, sell me a spare tire." I'm sure they have them.
I've got 20 of them.
Yeah, Martin, dude, Martin's got everything. I hope
we should have taken that off of my old truck.
Your spare tire, yeah.
Yeah, that was. Oh man, and Justin's. We could have taken that too. Shoot.
I'm hoping I have the time to. Here's another thing. I don't know geography. Like from Tennessee, like is there a path that goes through Kansas and through Denver? I've got to look.
There is. It's pretty straight.
I'm sure there's something.
Come back through Memphis and then still through here. 70 probably down. But we'll figure it out. We'll talk soon.
Yeah. What do we got here? Is there?
Yeah, Martin Rebuilds Barbecue. That's what.
We can just install a bunch of logos and.
We really should. I've got the land and stuff. Let's do it. Yeah.
Right. You heard it here first, folks.
That's awesome.
The MRBBQ.
That's awesome. Yes, do it.
I'm in the middle of the US, so it's central to everybody, right?
Texas can come.
Man, yeah. How far would drive? Like 10 hours.
Oh, 10 hours?
Something like that.
I'm just guessing.
I mean, we're about 10 hours from everywhere. Here you go, Chris. Here's Tennessee. I don't know where it's at.
34.
I'm right there at that heart, so I'm pretty close. You could make it work.
You can make it work. Does it go through? Where's Colorado? I'd love to go. No, Colorado's way north. I was thinking I would go see Ben.
Well, you see, Colorado's straight east of me or straight west of me. So I'm.
Yeah, you'd have to go all the way up to Kansas City and stuff.
It depends on where you go. You're out of the way. So it's, from this route, if we look right here, that's about an hour and a half, 2 hours north. So it's out of your way.
But a lot of flyover states.
Especially because I'm coming to see you in 2 months anyway. So.
Yeah. Well, I want to see your shop, man. I'd love to see your shop and your setup. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'll have to strategically see,
come to these
too often.
You're coming to the wrong Cleveland, Chris. That's what I was thinking. The wrong damn Cleveland. I'm
what's funny is when I saw Cleveland, I did think it was in Ohio, and then I realized it was in Tennessee. Yeah, that would be great.
Right. You're close to Jesse, close to Josh, and I think they're in Knoxville or something.
Yeah. I'll probably see them. I'd love to see them and you and Ben. I'd love to make that happen. I just don't know if I'm gonna have the time to because I figure it's already gonna take me 3 days to drive across the country, and there's so much stuff going on in my world that I don't know if I can add days. I'm just gonna have to power through. It's gonna be a fun road trip, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's going to be, but it's not going to be too bad, especially with the charging. I hate to say this, but you could drive it straight through and sleep at the chargers. I did that the other day, and that's not horrible.
Yeah, I'm not a sleep in the truck kind of guy, man.
I'm not really either.
I'm not either, but you got massaging seats now. So
massaging seats, it'll put me to sleep.
Massaging sleeps. There you go.
Right.
That's awesome.
Well, I think we ought to wrap up. we're 2.5 hours right at, so this is kind of a record breaker, but hopefully everybody got something out of why EVs aren't selling as much as gas. And the guys that are listening, if you have your EV and you like it, send us all messages or tell somebody how much you like it. So
yeah, keep spreading the love.
Yep. Well, I think we'll kick it out and we'll see everybody next week. And hopefully Chris is a platinum owner and we'll have a story to tell. So we'll see.
And then Martin needs to find one.
I do. Mine's going to be for sale before long. So there's, you never know. I hope it's still in the Ford family. I'm planning on that. So
we can change it to platinum charged.
Yeah. All right. Thanks everybody for joining. We will see you all next week and everybody have a good night.
See you guys.
See you guys.